various things, and the protagonist comments that it's very peaceful. Then number 1 is supposed to enter, but something appears in front of the protagonist, and he sees that participant making their selection. And those people next to him are pleased because the monsters are retreating, intimidated, and one of them remarks that he will pass easily. However, the protagonist doesn't think this is ideal, as the spear is the best weapon to create distance. Once the opponent begins to close in, swinging the spear like that will be ineffective. Consequently, the first applicant fails, and the protagonist explains that this is how things are. And finally, number 7 steps up, and they almost finish. They express their dissatisfaction with all of the participants that day, but Go just wants to be done with it, so he sends in the flies. Next participant. As soon as he enters, everyone senses a distinct aura from the boy and asks, "Who is that guy?" He has a sword, a bow, throwing knives, even a kill her and end this nightmare. Going after her with everything he has, finding his power, and starting to exchange blows with the Ice Queen, until they are both thrown back and spear. He brought all kinds of weapons, and they comment that he's skinny and doesn't look like he can handle himself. And Doc Gord says he told him not to attract attention, thinking it will be interesting, because that was a bit of an over-the-top entrance. The guy comes in with every weapon imaginable, and a pink Piran. He's totally prepared. He just gives a confirming look, and the exam begins. And the first enemies to appear are goblins. And the protagonist notices that there are 20 of them in the area. They seem very realistic, but no matter how well they imitate the real ones, it reminds him of the old days. He tells them that they can come at him, the monsters. They really do. As they swarm him, he prepares himself and kills them all with just his spear. Then the others, who were left behind, become afraid of what they just witnessed. And the protagonist realizes that the more he defeats those goblins, the more keep appearing, making him wonder what the point of this is. Then he grabs his throwing knives and notices that there are some enemies right behind him, saying that these rats keep trying to sneak up on him. Hitting them all, they start running away, terrified. He says that running is pointless, now drawing a bow so he can kill them with arrows, because the person who taught him how to use the bow, it was the most famous archer, Gilbert Green. And so he truly becomes Gilbert, and the goblins lose patience, deciding to go all out and try to die fighting. And he says that, of course, it is. Of course, this guy is the last one, pulling out his longest sword, and with that, he simply waits for them to get closer and strikes his blow while they are all in the air, swinging his sword and cutting everything, world around him. Then he ends up noticing that it was a little too much, and he is told that Giro passed and did very well. He says that he is exhausted after that, as he has to start training his body again. And so the examiners find that incredible, and Dako realizes that there will be no problem recruiting him into the association. He says that he thinks he has reached a conclusion, saying that if they collide again. And, in the middle of the fight, she thoroughly enjoys the combat, and starts to summon some icy magic in her hand, and throws it towards the boy. He is nearly hit, but feels bad for having lied about his profile, and the protagonist becomes the target of desire for everyone around Deck Go. And a while later, the protagonist starts laughing in Delk Gu's face, leaving. He's really pissed off. He says that novel is awesome, reading it, eating junk food, and drinking Coke. And so, Deok Gu thinks it's true. The most famous player in the world, who everyone admires, is like that. Way after being discharged 2 days ago, and Spectro is that lazy guy right there. So, he says that he has to endure it no matter what. But then, as the protagonist starts swearing, shouting, he yells John R., asking what he's reading. He says that the main character is a priest, but he just fights instead of healing. And he asks if he's crazy, and it turns out that the protagonist agrees with him. But he says that he should sit down anyway, since he brought the things he asked for. And the boy becomes interested. But Deok questions why he asked for the information from the incomplete portals, asking if he isn't planning on entering them at that level. And he replies that he is, because why else would he ask for it? And Deok is very surprised, asking if he knows what he's implying, considering they haven't been closed yet. The protagonist asks if he's joking and if he thinks he'd forget, and points out that the portals are full of monsters and traps that attack all humans. Furthermore, some portals are so dangerous that not even the players' bodies are left behind, and these are the portals that have never been closed, which are referred to as incomplete portals. However, he explains that these are the only portals that beginners are allowed to enter. Yet, he argues that this is precisely why it's even more dangerous, because high-level players aren't even able to enter them, and the newbies go there seeking rewards, but they all end up dying. And considering his current physical condition, it's too much of a burden for the boy. But Jay manages to quickly get out of the way, throwing himself into the corner. He goes after her and exchanges attacks again at an absurd speed with the Ice Queen until she falls to her knees, and what he's worried about, and if he doesn't know who he is. Besides, incomplete portals must be a major headache for the association, and Doc confirms that this is true, and you can't just let a friend go to such a dangerous place alone. And the protagonist is even on friendly terms with him, but he ruins the whole mood by saying he knew it was supposed to be an emotional moment, but he still goes there because he has a lot to gain from it. And Dokgo questions what he's talking about, and the protagonist explains that the portal rewards increase over time, and portals that haven't been closed for years will give a ton of XP. And Dokgo asks if he understood correctly that his only reason for going is simply to level up a little faster, and the protagonist says yes, without hesitating. But Dokgo asks if he has already forgotten that he died once, questioning why he can't just take the safest route. And he replies that his friends are waiting for him now, and they would do the same if they were in his place. But Dokgo argues that, even so, there's no reason to choose the most dangerous option. But the protagonist says that this isn't the only reason, and since he returned, as a player, you're bound to run into demons sooner or later, and time isn't on his side, so when he does encounter them, he has to be strong enough to defeat them. And Dokgo, he assumes he didn't think about it, saying he didn't realize he was under pressure, but he doesn't need to know that he was the one pulling the strings in the past. Those guys. And so, Dokgo says he can't do anything, so he's going to look for portals he can enter. Then he notices there's only one portal he can access with his current level, and the protagonist asks what it is, and so he shows information stating that it appeared 7 years ago, and 142 people have already tried to close it, and only players at level 1 can enter. So it's called the Rookie Graveyard, and the injured beaver stands behind her, and she says that it was fun. However, he, on the other hand, says he can't say the same, going over to her to deliver the final blow. But at that moment, she begins to shine. Protagonist notices that the requirements seem quite simple, and Dokgo says that, in any case, he's very confident. And the protagonist receives a notification on his smartwatch, and Dokgo says that the payment has arrived, confirming that he is now contractually bound to the association. He will be a subordinate for 1 year. Then, the protagonist wonders about this subordinate business and declares that he will show them. Who exactly is the servant here? So he immediately tells the kid to stop and calm down. Then he inquires about housing, asking if he can stay there, mentioning that the association must have residences for the players. Dagu says it's a good idea. He will be safer if he stays around there, and the protagonist asks him to provide a good room, and Dagu replies that he will do whatever he wants, because if he performs well, he might even give him an entire floor. The protagonist says that he is the one who will be giving the orders anyway, so it's all good. They even laugh, but the protagonist notices something, and Dagu explains that it's his armor. He questions if he brought anything strange, but he tells him to open it quickly, and when he opens it, he sees that it's just a coat, thinking that it's light and durable as well. He becomes quite happy, noticing that it's good, indeed, asking where he found it. He explains that it was made by Kuan Noa. Prota is extremely surprised to hear that name, asking if the old man is still alive. He says that he turned 98 this year and is almost completely worn out, but he is still holding the hammer to continue creating his works of art. He passed the forge down to his grandson, but still works there, and Prota is surprised to hear this, saying that since that's the case, he should thank him personally. But Dokgo tells Joe that he can't. He questions why. He says that they have to be careful about his safety. He then asks if he's suspecting Kuon Noa, but he clarifies that he isn't suspecting him, and so the boy realizes, noticing that then, it is said that he is absorbing the Ice Queen's power, and he starts to freeze, and he wonders, what the hell is this? And it is said that his body will enter a state of hibernation until he have eyes on the forge. He confirms that's correct, because the demons know about the relationship between him, Noah, and the Specter, and if he goes to meet her now, it would be the same as revealing his identity. And Prota, he ultimately accepts this without much fuss, because if he, as a newbie, leaves the country to meet that guy, everyone will notice, and Dokgo reminds him that he already said he's giving him support, so he will, to understand. And he says there's nothing they can do about it then, as he just needs to get stronger, go there, and see him. He simply asks Dokgo to tell him that he is grateful, and he will pick up that thing, but asks which weapon he should use. And Dokgo says that the warehouse should have something good, telling him to use whatever he wants. He says that now they are on the same wavelength, so he asks when the boy is going to be released. He says he was thinking of going right now, but he thinks he should increase his vitality first, since the exam alone used up all of his energy, and if his vitality is low, he won't even be able to fight the demons, let alone the monsters, so he needs to prepare himself. And Daok Go then asks how long that will take, questioning if it will take a month, but he says that's too long, asking if he doesn't think so, and stating that 10 days is enough. Then he heads to Namang province, to Mount Exongar, and upon arriving, in front of the portal, he finally prepares to enter the Dawn Curse portal. The requirements to complete this trial are simply to survive until the break of dawn, and when the protagonist enters the location, the sun is already setting. Then he notices that it's actually quite comfortable there, since he was holding his breath, and seeing that cemetery in front of him, he thinks, that comfortable isn't exactly the right word, as he must be going a little crazy. But, after reading a bit more, he realizes that, according to the information, this gate isn't so. Completely absorbed the Ice Queen's core, and so, 76 hours prior in Antarctica, the final dungeon lay before them, united with the Frost Queen. Then, a group begins to argue with Marumba, difficult, and the objective is simple. He just needs to survive until sunrise, and his timing is good, because, after searching for information, he discovered that the groups who entered in the morning were the ones who survived for a longer period, and the flow of time within the portal is different. Those who entered in the afternoon didn't have enough time to adjust to the time difference, and likely had to fight immediately. Ultimately, there was nothing they could do because they were only level 1 players. However, he has already experienced all sorts of hardships, so they should give him everything they have available. As time goes by, night arrives, and he notices a strange and unsettling sensation, as if he's being watched, possibly by the undead. He says that this is going to be a pain in the ass. The moment he stands up, the undead emerge from the ground, and one of them grabs the protagonist's leg. He says he knew this was coming, striking that thing on the head, attempting to kill it, but then he notices that it wasn't effective and tells it not to worry and that it can go back to sleep because he senses many more of them nearby. And so, the night, that's enough, and his level A hunter vision activates. As a result, all of his senses are strengthened, and the creature becomes even stronger, realizing the predicament it's in with so many undead around. Around it, noticing that there are a ton of them there. They don't feel pain, so they aren't bothered by lethal attacks. They ignore damage from the players and only focus on attacking, and that's the worst possible thing possible, since they're perfect for instilling fear in newbies who don't have any healing skills. He already understands why they call that place the newbie graveyard. Then, more monsters emerge from the ground trying to attack him, but he kicks them away with ease, ending that threat. After all, the creature is a top-tier newbie. He's not weak enough to be defeated by some. Asking if he is joking, because what he's requesting is the same as asking the rest of them to die, especially after coming all this way, since the sign in that room indicates that only one person can ascend the stairs. Weaklings. But then, when he looks back, he sees the number of them increasing more and more, and he thinks it's too much. After a while, he's really tired. Questioning if it's over, he collapses to the ground, resting for a moment near a tombstone. But then he hears someone speaking, asking who's there, and he's terrified by the questioning voice. Wondering where the person is, the voice responds, saying they're right there. The protagonist rushes over and sees a coffin, beginning to realize the person is underneath, and she confirms that she is. He asks how she got in there, and she explains that she trusted her friends and followed them to that place, but they all died except for him. Then, the person asks the protagonist to get her out, but the boy says he understands now, and before doing so, he asks if it could scream loudly. Then, the thing asks why it should scream. He replies that he needs to pinpoint its exact location, and so it actually screams. The protagonist then notices that the head is located there, and he shoots that thing repeatedly with the golden ammunition. He says to himself that he thought the portal was too easy, considering it was supposed to have killed 100 people. He is surprised, noticing that it was the very person who turned the place into a graveyard for rookies, calling him a fraud as he emerges, revealing his true form, asking the protagonist how he found out. Then, June R attacks, saying that no one could possibly be left alive in an incomplete portal, because, once the fight begins, the portal is closed, even if only one player is still alive. And the previous players probably knew this too, but sometimes they act without thinking. He says that's why, even with zombies present, it wouldn't have been difficult to defeat them. They only ended up dying because of the fraud. And with that, all the hostile monsters die, and he ends the Dawn Curse, noting that with stairs. But then a woman tells them to calm down, saying they don't have much time left and need to decide carefully, and suggests that Specter should be the one to go. He is impressed by all of that. He leveled up 4 times. These stats only increase every 5 levels. So, they didn't increase by much, but he figures he should be content with what he has. But then, he wonders if it's that's it, just that. But it turns out he receives the C-rank Dead's ability and confession. He notices he was scared because he thought he wouldn't get a reward, and says he's happy because he thought he would. Pick up a random item, but it was a new skill, and the confession of the dead allows him to look into the memories of the dead. Upon discovering that it is an ability to read memories, he thinks that if he can only read the memories of the dead, it might not be very good, but he wonders if he acquired the ability to format the hoaxer, since the requirements are specific, but maybe it will be useful. And this is a skill he achieved not as a Specter, but as player Junro R. So he's happy about that, because he's excited for what's ahead. And with the protagonist already there, he gets annoyed because ever since the boy came back, they haven't shut up, and he can't rest a single day. But the protagonist says that even so, he seems very happy and radiant. He says it's fun to see those guild idiots so frustrated. He figures it must be a good thing for him, since guilds generally don't bother with incomplete portals. So why are reporters bothering them? But he doesn't even answer. He asks Joao Rose instead, because otherwise he won't reveal himself anyway. He says no, saying it's not the right time yet, but Doc Go says that if they find out he closed an incomplete gate, he'll be in high demand. But Prota talks to him, asking why he thinks people buy luxury goods, even if they are mass-produced in the same factory. He asks if it's because they're expensive, and he says yes, it's because they're special, and because not everyone can afford them. Then he asks if Prota is going to become a Sky's suggestion, but the others also agree, stating that, aside from Specter, they all have weaknesses against ice abilities. Callie expresses his irritation at not being able to go, but acknowledges that luxury item. He says he's not just any luxury item, but an item that everyone wants, but nobody knows where to find, a legendary, limited edition. And Diok notices that he wants to bind them. He says that's right, and so he notices that sometimes the boy has a really bad personality, but the protagonist says that even so, he can't leave them like that indefinitely, adding that smart people, they'll find out soon, wondering if that guy will appear in other incomplete portals, and reporters will also appear at those incomplete portals, waiting for him to show up, which he doesn't need to do. To be arrogant to the point of announcing himself, because the world will find out eventually. Then, Dayu asks him, since when he cares about arrogance, and the protagonist gets irritated, but he just calls him to eat. And, a while later, the protagonist is doing handstand push-ups. After reaching the 73rd repetition, he fails and almost falls, but manages to complete it by falling backwards. And thus, his strength stat increases by 1 point. He thinks he's finally managed to lie down on the floor, and after that, he stops to drink some water, saying that he finally feels alive. And so, he looks a little into his seeing many dungeons that he can complete. And then he mentions that Lilith's Garden appeared years ago, being the oldest incomplete gate in Korea. And if a portal remains like this for too long, monsters will start to emerge, and these are called open portals. And the government and the association offered a large reward to anyone who could close the portal, and people from all over the country tried, but there were 124 attempts and 124 failures. So, he says that they had no choice but to leave the portal to other countries, and spent a small fortune to hire the super rookie from India, Sharvish. And he was a genius with a bow. In terms of potential, he could have reached Gilbert Green's level, or perhaps even surpassed him, but he failed, and everyone lost hope in closing the subscribers by January 2026. I'm going to post a complete series here on the channel, from the beginning all the way to the latest chapter. And get this, the series will have over 100 chapters. So, challenge accepted. There's really no one better suited than Specter for this. It's alright. And the other girl says that, since C figured it out so quickly, they'll say that everyone shares the same opinion. He gets angry, questioning what Portal, as a 2-year-old player with a great future ahead of him, died. He thinks it's a shame, implying it could have been him, and so he prepared even more carefully, because he just increased his strength through exercise. So, all of his stats, boosted by magic, are above 30. And that should be enough since his stats are at their maximum for his level. But even a rising star like Tuchar failed to close the portal, so he can't rule out the possibility of some hidden threat lurking there, and will prepare by considering all possible situations possible. And yet, he uses a bit of his magic, mentioning that since he can use the freeze ability, he's starting to get used to it. He imagines how strong it will be in a real fight. True. And so he heads to Lilith's Garden, finally arriving there. And to close the portal, he needs to defeat all the monsters. He doesn't know how many Lilfs will emerge, but if groups of 4 failed, it means there's some kind of hidden trap that killed them. But at that moment, he looks around, wondering what that labyrinth down there is, and thinks that, for now, he has to stay away from that suspicious place. The Lilfs come out at night, so he'll just relax until night falls. Then they start sprouting from the ground out of nowhere and make a noise right next to the protagonist, scaring him. He complains that they should at least warn him that they were coming out, and so the night arrives, and all of the protagonist's senses are strengthened, but he realizes that there are just 2 so far, but he sarcastically thinks it's a nice reception, as they throw attacks at the boy. Then, the protagonist rushes forward, planting his halberd in the ground and jumping over that attack, preparing to attack. And, as he managed to jump, he uses his ice ability to create a spear and throw it at those things, calmly killing the first one along with its friend. And, she means by that, and she says she doesn't think she needs to say it, but she also thinks the Specter should go. And so, everyone decides to leave everything in the hands of the Specter, and he asks if they. So he notes that the ice spear is great, as the Ice Queen's power is certainly useful. But then another attack comes at him, and he realizes it's a horde of monsters, and notices that 2 wasn't nearly enough, and so he goes at them once again, killing them all very easily, chopping the monsters to pieces and splitting them in half, and the last one that's left is still lost. But the Prota appears behind him, preparing the final attack to finish it off, and when he finally eliminates the monster, he notices that it was quite quick. But he notices that several others have appeared, wondering when this happened. Now there are twice as many in front of him, and so he begins to realize that they multiply when they are killed. And after the Prota starts facing those things, he begins to run away from them, asking how many of them there are, and gets irritated by it. And the monsters go after him, throwing vines at the Prota. He needs to defend himself with everything he has, more and more, using the Queen's powers in the best way possible, as he now has a spear and also an ice shield that stops those vines. And with it, using that shield, he also prepares to attack, harnessing the power of shadows and cleaving through all the monsters with a single, beautiful frontal strike. And as they fall dead, he notices that he is extremely tired, wondering how many hours have already passed, as closing the portal is tiring, but not impossible. However, there's one thing bothering him. Even though he has an S-rank ability, if the difficulty were only this, then 4 people should be enough. And among the players who have tried to close the portal in the last 9 years, there have been several with incredible potential. And not only that, super rookie Tarvish was one of them. And from what he's seen, Tarvish should have been able to handle at least half of the monsters alone. And if there were more, they are sure they won't regret it. So, they find it strange. And the guy in the cowboy hat says that they might even regret it if he loses to the Ice Queen. And they will all, people with him, they would have been able to close the portal. And the monsters keep coming at him relentlessly. And the protagonist continues to wonder to himself why Tarvish failed as he slays the monsters until he finally, Lilf's garden comes to an end. And so, as the sun rises, he says that he saw his life flash before his eyes, but as long as he didn't die, everything is fine. And he says he can imagine how he is. He arrived there without thinking about anything, wondering where he is and feeling tempted to enter that maze. And so, he really thinks it's no big deal and starts getting ready to go in. But then he sees a dead person right there and says he smells bodies. He wonders if they were trying to escape, since there are a lot of bodies. It makes him think that the maze ended up being just a waste of time for them, because if they can't block the horde, it will become a dead end. Eventually, he finally reaches the end of the maze, but when he looks to the side, he sees Tucher there, recognizing that bow, because if he remembers correctly, it's called Storm, and so he pays his respects, asking for permission and taking the bow of the Storm, named because if you shoot an arrow with it, it will fly around unpredictably like a butterfly, like the wind during a storm, remembering that the Indian government entrusted it to Toka Charich, noting that they would give it to him until he noticed something else, a notebook, and he can't figure out who it belongs to. And so, on April 7th, 204, at 12:40 inches the afternoon, he was sent to clear the Lilf's portal in Korea. He was quite happy when they asked him to do this, saying he would do whatever it takes, but apparently his father spoke, with Tokar, telling him to think again, since the portal still hadn't been closed after all those years. He might not make it back, but he says the Koreans came all the way. Die in vain, but they trust him. K, upon learning that they won't die in vain, asks if they're really talking about him. He's shocked that everyone trusts him so much, as they say that if it's there to ask for help, asking how he could refuse, as it goes against Vishnu's teachings. Then he says that he is level 10 now, and this is his only chance to enter the garden, Delof, and he has to leave. Sometime later, he asks a girl if she will go with him. She says of course she will, because she believes in him, and will follow him wherever he goes. And even if he said he would go alone, she would find a way to go with him anyway. She is very happy that he invited her to go, and besides, she has to protect him. He is surprised by her talking about that. He says he is very happy that Zaya is going with him, saying that there is no one else he would trust to watch his back, and she knows it. And the girl replies, of course, yes, because she is his partner. And in this, the two are much more than partners, promising that they will close the portal, no matter what happens. In another location, Tuchar saw one of the members of Taken Ter 5, his team talking with his daughter, promising that he will return. Then Tuchar speaks with him, apologizing for calling him in, and he says that it's the first time he's going on a trip so far to leave his daughter like that. But her mother is there, and since she asked him for help, he can't refuse. And Cho thanks him, and he mentions that since he's going along with the great super rookie, he needs his participation. And with that, they head to New Delhi, to Indira Gandhi International Airport, and prepare to fly together with his fiancée and one more member, arriving there and training a little bit. And he says he has a good feeling about this. And then on the 24th of April 2044, at 11:37 a.m., they finally entered Lilf's garden, and when they enter the location, they think it's very beautiful. It's the first time they've seen a portal like this, but they snap back to reality, as they are in a dungeon and can't afford to be distracted, and they decide that, for the time being, they will observe the place. And then at 8:33, Specter, he will succeed, but then, he apologizes. And so, 25 years later, it's 2024, and monsters that humanity cannot defeat have appeared, and it is said that the Ice Queen is a brick of them appear. They question if it isn't a bit too much, and as more of them keep coming, they start to calmly kill the monsters, and thus they double in numbers, reaching 32 this time. In this, the numbers keep growing, and the tank, who was hit in the chest, starts bleeding. Tuchar, seeing this, is surprised, and orders the others to be gathered so they can flee, and they begin to run to the maze, and that girl urges Tuchar to hurry, because they need to find shelter. He thinks that every time they defeat the horde, their numbers only increase, doubling the amount with each passing day. And this dangle is completely insane, and so, after a while, inside that maze, the group's tank can't hold on any longer, asking Tuchar to take care of his daughter, dying in front of his friends. And so, April 25th, 5:29 a.m., only 3 of them remain, and one of their companions dies due to his injuries, and Tuchar doesn't stop crying. And then at 7:12 a.m., the sun begins to set, and he prays to Shiva, asking him to grant him mercy, because only then will he be able to write again tomorrow. And just about to, crowds once again. They can't take it anymore. He continues writing in his diary, saying that they defeated the 4th LF Order last night, and that the 5th will come soon, with at least 120 of them. They have been fighting for their lives, and there are still around 40 left. He cannot take care of so many alone, looking to the side and seeing his bride sleeping, exhausted. But he thinks that on that day they will be able to get out of there, asking that, please, there won't be a 6th horde. But then, after the 6th horde, the girl finally dies in his arms. He cries a lot on account of that. He says he promised to close the portal, but what's the point of doing that without having them there? But then someone talks to Char, saying it's time for him to die, and that killer sets his sights on monster that defied logic and froze the Pacific with just a snap of her fingers, and everyone fell into despair when she appeared. But the 5 heroes still continued carrying the flame of Char's life. But he can see the attack coming thanks to his fiancée's crystal ball, and manages to escape the attack, so that the killer only manages to hit his shoulder, and he is left. Be warned about this. Then the assassin is surprised that he managed to dodge the attack, commenting that he certainly deserves to be India's rising star. And it turns out that Tuchar notices something about his eyes, saying that he really was a demon, asking how he could deceive them like that, questioning how he could be a demon if Z brought him there. He replies, that was the stupidest thing he's ever heard, and it's quite simple. Heard, and it's very simple. His girlfriend was just as idiotic as he was, because even so, he didn't realize he'd have so many lives taken in that way, so he considered helping a little before his friends die, and they were useless and died far too quickly. And it was almost dangerous for him too, but at that moment he starts to get irritated, and the demon thanks him for helping to close the portal. But now he has to weather the storm, and will be able to join his friends. But But then Char goes crazy, but ends up noticing something, his face showing astonishment. And the demon, he asks what's with that face, questioning if he's afraid to die. But then a sixth horde actually appears, and just like that, Hanem notices, seeing the boy running away. He says he didn't think he would run away, but it doesn't matter because he's going to die from the poison anyway. But as the boy runs, Hanem doesn't even notice what's happening, with several monsters falling on top of him and killing him as well. He notices that there was indeed a sixth horde running and poisoning him, becoming frustrated because he can't even feel his arm anymore. He thinks, no, he can't die like that, entering the labyrinth and hiding there, reaching the end of it, only to realize that the place was, in fact, a trap. He thinks he can't die like this, becoming even more frustrated by what happened at the end. Hope is heading towards Antarctica, and a nerdy kid in the stands asks if the group attacked the nest, and the presenter confirms that's right, noting that even though he's young, he's very perceptive of that dungeon, and he says he's lost the feeling in his right arm because it seems the demon put the poison on the dagger, and whether it's from the luffs or the poison, he's going to die regardless. So, if anyone finds that diary, they should tell their families how sorry he is. And with that, the protagonist concludes that story, noting what happened and thinking that was all. But there are a few more pages. In those pages, Torch's final words question whether the rest of his friends are still alive and whether they managed to close the portal, saying that it was all that demon's fault. Those damned demons, dying with hatred for them. He prays to the great Shiva, asking for permission for him, Torch, to clothe them with an eternal soul and make all those wretches burn in hell. For he begs that someone, anywhere, avenge this warrior. And so, the protagonist is the right person who ends up seeing this. He is very grateful to Torch, as he has now discovered everything, and the number of buffs increases with the number of players. He went alone, so there weren't many, and he managed to kill them relatively easily. What if he had come there with 3 other people? Thinking about it makes him sick, because he doesn't even want to contemplate it. And so, he says he'll take the diary with him, just to be safe, and after telling Arco, he contemplates it a little more, because he's going to retrieve it. Borrowed for a while, because it's not like he's taking it for free or anything like that. He's going to kill those damn demons and avenge him, bidding farewell forever to the young hero of the city, India. And returning to the association building, Deku says that Proto was right, because they didn't say anything, and now everyone knows. He says he already said this would happen. He mentioned who was there, saying he was holding himself back from talking at the entrance, but he says that, setting that aside, why did Deku go there so early? Well, he could have told him through Vita. He says he explains that the legendary players achieved the greatest feat in history and are known as the 5 heroes, and so the presenter asks everyone to pay their respects, because thanks. More polite to say this kind of thing in person. Furthermore, the villains sent him a message, as they wanted to thank him for the diary, and the families were informed, to which Proto reacts, in a very apathetic way, saying that it's really good. He says he can be happy for that snot-nosed kid, and that's it. I said that of course he is, but despite that, it's a shame about the storm, because it was created as a weapon for national defense, but it was in the Tocha's inventory. Then Proto says he can look at what's right in his hand, showing the weapon to Deok. He doesn't even believes what he is seeing, asking if Proto is crazy. So he asks why that shit is with him, and then says that he should have left it there, because he knows very well that it belongs to the government. Indian, but he says he just borrowed it. Then he questions what he's going to say, questioning whether Proto is trying to say that Tucha transferred the bow to him, but then he simply gives up, telling the boy to deal with it himself, because, whatever. He says he will use it carefully, so he doesn't need to get angry, but he tells him not to even joke about it, because they think the arc is gone. But the protagonist clarifies that isn't what he's concerned about. He explains it's because of the demon he's going to attract, even though he mentioned the demon died in the portal. However, the protagonist suspects that he wasn't the only one interested in the arc, and that guy must have seen the news reports but wasn't foolish enough to believe them. And in reality, that's correct. He says that he's a crazy guy, who values items more than lives. He'll know that he has the bow, and will come after him, and the protagonist thinks that the worst part is that he's right, and there's only one person he can think of. And he says it's the demon archer, Carl Signia. He's famous for his collection of bows, and the protagonist says that even the other demons talk about him, and this one is powerful, but because of that, he's wanted all over the world. And he remembers. To the 5 heroes, the Frost Queen was defeated, and numerous safe zones emerged on Earth, leading to improved conditions. But then the nerd shouts, pointing out that the ice statue that he doesn't meet the level requirement, so he couldn't enter Liv's garden personally. and the protagonist agrees that's right, and if he comes after him, he'll collaborate with others. Demons, for him to collect at the next incomplete portal, and it will be stronger than when Tuar was alive. Then Dekko asks what he's talking about, saying that it's far too dangerous. It's still possible to return it, but the protagonist tells him to stay calm, because if they start preparing now, there won't be any problems, asking if he thinks he'll be easy prey. Then, Dekko thinks for a moment, and says, of course not, but it's still worrying, and tells his friend that he wants to keep him safe, and the protagonist gives a small smile, asking who he thinks he is, as he is the one and only So John R., telling him not to worry too much, as it won't be like 25 years ago. Then he notices that the guy really hasn't changed at all, with this frozen time. But then he receives a call, and leaves quickly, saying that he has to refuse, and asking him to please send them back. And the protagonist doesn't understand anything, asking what happened was this. He says that reporters are arriving in droves, having all heard that he closed the portals, and they want an interview. The protagonist then pauses to think, speaking to Dekko and asking him, don't send them home. He asks why, and the protagonist explains that if they are going to fight the demons, they should at least get to choose the battlefield. He says he's going to hold a press conference, and so all the reporters are really sitting around, eagerly awaiting the protagonist's words. Meanwhile, they are doing research on Joao Ro, noting that his first portal was the Curse of Dawn. The next portal was Leofre's garden, and it's been a while since they've seen such a promising rookie, saying that Korea might have another player on par with King, Jong, or Shin Song, started to move. But then the girl on stage urges everyone to calm down, insisting that it's impossible, because the temperature inside that compartment is monitored 24 hours a day. So, Ryun. They remark that, furthermore, he has a talent for attracting attention even amongst countless other talented individuals, and that he shines too brightly. Then they notice him approaching and order a photo to be taken, but they are surprised, because the protagonist arrives with the nerdy, neat, who never leaves his house, wearing flip-flops, shorts, and a cheap $9.99 tons shirt, and they start questioning if this is really the same player who closed 2 incomplete portals, wondering if that crazy guy wandered into the press conference by accident. He thinks it's quite a sight, wondering if he should have at least changed clothes, but then he mentions that he was dressed. Everything used to be about specters, and now, this is a pain. However, he simply introduces himself to everyone as Joao R, and announces that they will hold the press conference for half an hour, starting now. So they are left speechless and forget to ask questions. Then everyone jumps in, asking him to share the details of his experiences in the portals, inquiring about how he felt when he entered them, wondering if there was any particular reason why he debuted in incomplete portals, and he says he'll start with the Curse of Dawn, answering all the questions. So they ask, what is this all about? Because it seems like he's been through this before, and he's more experienced than he appears, and the protagonist notices that the allotted time has finally come to an end, saying that he will answer one last question. Then, a person raises their hand, asking if he has already decided which portal he will tackle next. He says no, because there is a portal he wants to go to, but his level is too low. And then they ask him, what portal would that be? He says it's the portal to the Eastern Sea, smiling at everyone, and one of the reporters drops his pen, wondering what he's talking about. And everyone goes crazy taking photos and recording this moment, and they question if he is talking about Time's Eastern Sea portal, the last uncompleted portal in Korea, which 350,000 subscribers by January. There will be an incredibly long video, all in one go, for you to really enjoy during this vacation. And this video here is also incredible, and you can believe that nothing should happen to the ice statues, but she's shocked to hear a noise behind her, and when she turns around, she notices that they have indeed started to move, and then something explodes from within and falls to the ground. If he manages to close, he will have closed 3 incomplete portals, and that has never happened before. And the protagonist confirms that's right, smiling at everyone, leaving them even more surprised. And they say there's a boss there asking if anyone has anything to say about it, mentioning that the association has been debating whether or not to explore using a rank 1 portal, and asking if he doesn't think it might be too dangerous. And the protagonist thinks it makes sense that they're reacting negatively, since that's the effect of having a strong boss, because bosses are on a different level than normal monsters, as they are immensely powerful, and some of them even take monsters as servants and act as their king. But he simply tells all the reporters that if he fights against a boss, he will win. Then, the press conference ends, and his entire speech goes viral online, and someone observing notices that they are making a fuss over a newcomer, but they say it only highlights how important incomplete portals are. It's been a long time since they've heard anything so interesting coming from the first floor, and that assistant says that if he is interested, he could contact him, but he refuses, saying he's not interested yet, and in reality, he's far from it. And when something extraordinary happens, they call it destiny. If it happens twice, they call it skill. But he thinks they should wait for a best-of-3 series before making assumptions, as there's no need to memorize the names of people who will soon die. The man in front of the arrogant guy is trembling and says that if player Junro performs one more miracle, he will receive an invitation from Shingon himself. Run. The leader of the largest guild in Korea is Goblin. Meanwhile, Prota turns down all those invitations, saying they're not bad, but not good either, declining them and, incidentally, he, ahead. Starting everything there, they announce that the absorption rate was 100% and congratulate him. And Prota feels incredibly cold when he emerges from that block of ice, and they tell him he asks if all of these are requests for cooperation, and Deok Go says it's because of the press conference, and he's become quite popular. So he mentions that the XP and drops are good, the difficulty is manageable, and it's a good payment, and it's difficult to find a request that meets all 3 requirements. He says that, honestly, he thinks they could try the last one, but then Delco says no, because if he helps now, it will set a precedent by asking about the one he took, since it belongs to a father who is looking for a cure for his daughter who has a terminal illness, and the key to the cure is the core of a gray fox. So Prota thinks about it, since he hasn't heard that name in quite a while. And Delco remembers that he saw one of those when he was starting out as a player, and Prota says that almost died that day. But then Delco says it's easier to show him. It's the Divine Fox National Ranking Portal, Raposa Divina. He is surprised by this, seeing the images. So Delco says that the portal only appeared 3 months ago and hasn't yet been declared an incomplete portal. But a monster there has already devoured 7 groups. And Prota notes that the level required is higher than the immutable gray foxes that he defeated as a Specter, and this time it will be even harder than before. Then Deokgu says that it won't be as difficult as it seems, because the player's standards have increased since then and the items have gotten much better too. He says he hasn't seen any good players since he came back, but he believes in Deck G and says that he is right, because if Deck G wants to see the skills of his rookies, he should go with this one. Then he says that it's actually a request from a friend, and the protagonist is surprised, asking if he knows the Hmong group, mentioning that his friend is the president. He questions if he is Choi Monhek's son. He clarifies that he actually has a second son named Choi Po. And so, while they are discussing this, someone knocks on the door, and a girl enters, asking the president if he has completely absorbed the Ice Queen's core and received a new ability, Hank X's Frost, and he is shocked by what he sees, which is very different from how things were when he went to sleep, as if called her, and he welcomes Chase 1, saying that from now on she will be Junrot's secretary and advisor. But the protagonist thinks that no matter how famous he is as a rookie, he still thinks that it would be suspicious if the president kept doing everything for him. And so, if I go in there acting all polite and talking to Prota, he'll reciprocate, and Go talks to Jor, telling him that he will talk to the group president, asking him to work well with C1, saying that she is extremely responsible and he can trust her in the future, and the girl thanks him for his kindness. He's just waiting for the two of them to produce good results. Then she talks to Jun, asking if he knows about the Manhwa group, and Prota says yes, because they are #1 in Korea, and she says they are famous for having a clean tax record and no scandals, which is unusual for rich families, and their life was perfect. But a tragedy happened, and the eldest daughter, Choi Perot, has baby breakup syndrome. Prota says that it is an innate disease that some people with a lot of yin energy end up having, and the only way to treat it is by transplanting something with great energy. Yang used her body to extend her lifespan, and she says that one of the ways to treat this disease is by using the nucleus of the gray fox. And 29 years ago, Spectron Nin, who was the best player at the time, killed the gray foxes and proved its effectiveness. And she says that Spectron is someone she admires a lot, and the protagonist feels sorry for him, but she questions why he became so shy, and he says he was just moved by the story. As soon as they arrive, he notices that things are still the same, and she asks if he has been there before, and he says it was a long time ago. So she asks him to wait there, as she will go in first and make sure nothing happens. But then, someone comes to the door asking if he's John Rock, and says it's a pleasure to meet him because, wondering what the hell is going on. Then, news articles about Prota are released, saying that the legend has awakened from his long sleep and the Specter has returned after 25 years, and everyone is talking about he was waiting for him, that he is the leader of that family, and the secretary is surprised that he came in person, and the protagonist also introduces himself to him, but the president says that he is the hero, who closed incomplete portals for the safety of citizens and is being honored for it. But as soon as he touches his hand, the protagonist realizes that he is literally trembling and says that this is his only wish, begging him to please save his dear Resum from this damn disease. Then the protagonist remembers that he needs the Grey Fox core. He confirms this, explaining that after searching for every possible piece of information, he discovered a case in France of someone who recovered completely, and they said it was because of the Grey Fox core, and he gets straight to the DOF subject, stating that he will offer a reward of 15 billion won. He will also provide any items or materials he needs in the portal, and anything else that he requires, as long as he can obtain it. And so the girl is surprised, thinking the reward is too high, and that he will definitely accept. But then the protagonist apologizes, saying that he has to refuse, and everyone is surprised by the boy's reaction. He elaborates, saying he'll give him 25 or even 30 billion, and asks if that's still not enough. But the protagonist replies that he's not trying to increase the offer, stating that 10 billion is more than enough, surprising the girl as much as the president. He then asks if he can inquire about the reason for this, and the protagonist explains that when Spectro received the offer from the French contractor, he received 100 million, and the contractor was willing to give up his entire company to save his daughter. But Spectro refused everything, and only asked for the 100 millions, and his reason is the same as Spectro's. You shouldn't take advantage of someone who wants to save their daughter. Sometime later, on their way back home, the girl says she'll park the car, telling him. He is shocked that so much time has passed, because since he has been frozen for all this time, his entire body is weak, and he can barely clench his fists, and he notices that his body is still trembling, that he can go on ahead. And she remembers to ask if the protagonist had heard that story about Spectro from the president. The protagonist is a big fan, and was a close friend of Spectro's. So, he asks her if she believes the story about him, since he has a reputation for being cold and calculating, but she says it's quite the opposite. Someone as kind as him definitely would have done that. And he questions whether Cha really thinks he was a kind person. Then, Spectro, she says that's what she thinks, and she's even more certain after hearing what he said today, because Spectro witnessed his parents die right in front of him, and the contractor had the money to offer 10 billion won. And if that weren't the case, doesn't she think he wouldn't have even suggested a price? So someone who couldn't save his own family wouldn't want to let others go through the same thing. But she says that, of course, no one but him knows that, while the protagonist is quite surprised by the girl's deduction. And so, sometime later, Delgo asks how it went. He says they only talked for 2 hours, and that she's good at giving advice. He says that soon he will see her worth. She could work in a famous guild or a large company with just her silver tongue. She only decided to work there because the association is taking care of Spectro, and so they continue walking, and the protagonist asks where they are. But Dagoa notices that he is changing the subject simply because he is embarrassed to open that door with his fingerprint, saying that if he wants to defeat a Grey Fox level monster, he'll need to take something useful with him. And that place has all the old weapons, and he says that, in the last 25 years, their technology has advanced greatly. They created weapons made of materials they couldn't even imagine, and changed the traditions of the players. Then, he throws a sword into the protagonist's hand, telling him to try using magic on the sword, and so his magic. But then people arrive, calling for Prota, saying that the president of the Players Association is coming there now, and he wonders if it's someone he even wants to meet. But if it's someone, he imbues the sword, and it starts to shine as if it were a saber. He says that if he uses a little magic on the sword, an artificial key sword will appear, and it can easily pierce the hide of key sword. And the protagonist paused, looking at the item. The president continued, mentioning that another person wanted a shield imbued with magic, and went on describing everything available there. But then, the protagonist asked if, have players only been using this type of weapon lately? Gu is surprised and explains that high-tech weapons are very efficient, so he doesn't see why they wouldn't use them. He asks if even the rankers use them. He replies that he's not sure, since rankers usually use customized weapons. However, the protagonist dismisses them, saying these things are just children's toys, in the face of real predators, and they will be useless against monsters that can tear apart the player's magic. Then, he speaks to Doc Go, asking why he thinks weak monsters appear in the lower levels, wondering if it's because they would die if they faced strong monsters. And Doc Go confirms that's exactly the reason, adding that it's ironic, but the system is fair in that regard, and players who try to evolve by facing enemies with similar attributes, allowing them to defeat stronger enemies with their accumulated strength and experience. But then, Doc Go asks if he doesn't believe these weapons are effective against strong monsters, and the protagonist confirms that's precisely the case. Then Doc Go agrees, stating that players who rely solely on high-powered weapons, technology have never achieved anything truly significant. Furthermore, these weapons are only cost-effective for clearing portals of a comparable level. The protagonist says he understands, until he notices a sword, thrown in a corner, inquiring about it. Doc Go explains that this sword was also crafted from new materials, but it proved largely ineffective, so he discarded it. Then the protagonist doesn't recognize him and is going to send him away because he hates being disturbed. But then the doctor confirms, saying that he always talks like Specter. He was a close friend, and Prod understands this well since he doesn't have, if he's serious, unleashing his best attack, causing everything around them to tremble. And Doc Go is visibly startled. Then he remarks that the world has indeed become interesting and questions what the issue is with those players who, they are limiting themselves with those toys. And sometime later, in front of the portal that the protagonist said he would enter, he notices a large crowd of reporters and players. Then he speaks to them. He mentions that everyone is excited about the Gray Fox core because, including him, a group of 27 people will be entering the portal, and some of the participants were sent by guilds. The protagonist becomes thoughtful as he leaves, mentioning that he would like another cup of that delicious tea she made, but he also tells the girl that she will have to wake up earlier than normal tomorrow. She questions him about it. He says that after today's portal, he will receive many cooperation requests, and as soon as he leaves to enter the portal, all the reporters will come to harass him. Then they ask John Rowe if it's true that he was sent on a personal mission by the Mongo group, and that it's his first time fighting alongside other players, asking him how he feels regarding that. Meanwhile, the other players in the corner are saying that you'd think he was a ranker, since normal players like him are usually overlooked. The girl mentions that he's the rookie of the moment, so he's probably been mentioned in the news, but they're surprised that that skinny guy actually closed 2 incomplete portals. They don't believe it, because even his items look like garbage, but they figure the protagonist must have more stuff in his inventory, questioning if they really think he'd enter the portal with just that weapon. But that concludes the interviews, and they prepare to enter and head inside the portal. And already inside, at the portal's entrance, amidst the burning dunes, everything is just sand. They think it's a vast desert, many people who would call him a friend. So he thanks her for the warning, assuming he'll figure it out when they meet, because the world has really changed anyway. And he remembers that's what, wondering how they're going to fight in this sand, since it's too hot. But then, one of them shouts, telling everyone to fight. They ask who he is, and he introduces himself, saying that his name is Tingungo, a member of Korea's rank 13 guild, Tonha High, and all the other NPCs are surprised that the Shion High guild will participate. So, they mention that, as everyone knows, there isn't much. There isn't much to do alone in a portal like this, and since their group is large, they don't want to fight amongst themselves and end up creating unnecessary danger. He says he would like to make a proposal, and the guy with the horns questions him about it. He says he's offering 10 million WS, and his guild is offering 10 million ONS to everyone who follows their instructions in there, but they would like to keep, with the reward, the Gray Fox core. And everyone is surprised that what he really wants is the Gray Fox core, and he says that paying them all won't even cost 300 million ONS. But he asks how they plan to get the core without Shion High's help, and says that his guild is trying to be generous, and if anyone changes their mind, they will offer 5 million. And the crowd even thinks for a while, but ends up accepting. Meanwhile, Prota sets off on his own. Then, that guy from the guild asks if Junro isn't going to join them. He says he plans to go it alone, leaving everyone behind. And the fat guy says that, after all, the rumors were just exaggerations, since they say he is a genius. But since he decided to fight alone, they don't need to worry about this guy's position. But then the leader asks when he said he was worried, getting angry and telling everyone to come along. But Prota continues on his way alone, and he talks about the Gray Fox, saying that this guy is something between a monster and a mythical creature, and it's a boss with 9 tails that grow every 1,000 years, and when all 9 tails grow, he will ascend to the heavens and become a Millennium Fox. He and all his friends wanted a peaceful world, but then he questions what to do now, because all he knows how to do is fight, so he wonders if he's unemployed, but figures it doesn't matter to take care of his race. And every time the number of tails increases, the number of firefoxes he can control also increases, and it is unknown exactly how many tails the gray fox in this portal has. And for now, he needs to find a good spot, but when he glances around, everyone else notices it too, and the guy from the Xongrai Guild attacks the ground as several foxes emerge from it, fire foxes. But he tells them not to panic and to follow his instructions, as the vice leader needs to tell him how many there are. He says there are about 30, and the monsters head up while they wait, looking for the best moment to attack those things. At that moment, the fat guy starts activating a mechanism that's nearby, and 4 towers rise up around them, and those towers start electrocuting the foxes that come towards them. And everyone is surprised that it worked, and Shanghai tells the monsters to take a look, saying that they are in a different era than those weak weapons and simple traps, and that's the power of the second floor's technology. They go into the fight like they're fully equipped Power Rangers, and they announce that they've already killed them. More than half of them were saying that Leader Tai and the fat guy think that if they continue like this, they'll catch the gray fox easily. But then he says that if he has time to talk, he should keep going. Attacking. The girl says she was nervous after hearing something about the gray fox, but that it's nothing important. And Lex Lowton says that's because they joined the Shanghai Guild. But then, something gigantic appears above them, making everything go dark, and Lex looks up, asking what that is. And the gray fox, huge, with several tails, appears there, a monster. Gigantic, just looking at them. Then the bald man shouts that the fox has arrived, and seeing these dead cubs below, she becomes very angry and starts screaming and threatening them, because he no longer needs that mask. But then, when he takes off the mask, they are surprised to be talking to Specter, asking him why he removed his mask, and Prot says, it's because effectively. Then they notice that she has 9 tails in total, and that it's impossible for her to be a 9-tailed fox, since the one Specter defeated barely had 6 tails. But then, the guild leader tell them to pull themselves together, maintain their formation, and focus on attacking. But then everyone is shaking, and definitely doesn't look like they'll be of any help, especially since they know the guild is with him. But then the guild leader thinks that it doesn't matter if the monster pierces its head or heart, it will die either way. Then he says that the trap he prepared is much stronger than anything else they've ever done, and if she gets caught in it, she won't be able to escape. And today, he will kill the fox and overcome the Specter. But then the fox spits a breath of fire so strong that I'm sure there wasn't a single bone left. So, after that absurdly powerful attack, those who managed to survive are also in terrible shape, and the leader thinks that none of his weapons, traps, or strategies worked, and how are they going to kill this huge monster? They're thinking that it's impossible, and so she prepares to launch another attack, and he realizes that this is how he's going to die. But as the attack comes, the Prota steps in front of them all. They are surprised, and John R., instead of asking what he is doing, tells him to get out of the way, but the boy says he will be fine, and the leader almost doesn't believe it as he pulls out his sword. Then Cub prepares another Bijudama, throwing it at Prota with everything he has, and the guild leader thinks that this is the end. But Prota cuts through that attack in the middle without any problem, while they are quite surprised, and the boy feels his sword shaking with the power of that attack. He notes that they were doomed from the beginning, but he wonders if it's right to be satisfied with just that. He orders them to take the survivors and get out of there. But then the leader asks about Prota. He says it's obvious, he will take care of that guy. Manhwa is really good. Also, the releases will now be a little different here on the channel. One week, I will only post new manhwas, and the following week, I will only post World is Peaceful. Now they don't need heroes anymore. But then they try to talk to Prot while he wonders what's going on. At that moment, the guy in the suit, who always has to be in this type, there. Then, as they run away, Prota comes face to face with that monster, who starts to howl in order to summon him. He tells everyone to get out of there, while saying that now that he's going to have fun with that thing, and the monster summons several more fireballs as Prota charges forward, dodging that thing's attacks, and the monster, with Genoa trying to hit Prota with those things, but now he invokes the power of ice, creating a shield to defend himself from the fire attacks, and he says it's paid off, that she won't let him get close, but then he keeps forcing his approach, decreasing the distance between the two. And the monster looks at him, creating another huge Bijudama on top of its head, and Prota recognizes that as the giant stigma's explosion, saying that he will not survive if he is hit by it. As the attack comes towards him, he quickly does something, but the attack lands right where he was. However, the fox stays there searching until it picks up his scent, noticing that he is not dead, and attacks him with its paw, taking part of the boy's hair. But he manages to dodge and climb above it, the monster's snout, coming face to face with it. While the monster spews fire upwards to try and hit him, the protagonist jumps to escape, and in the air, he creates several pieces of ice so that they can serve as a springboard for him to get closer to the fox faster. Then, he states that the gray fox's strength increases with the number of tails it has, and he wonders what happens if he cuts off some tails, and some of them actually fly off due to the ice and the impact that severed them. He says that, of course, just as he thought, its strength will decrease, and from outside, the portal is still red, indicating that the people inside are still alive. Outside, reporters are saying that it has been 10 hours since the players entered, and the previous group, full of mana, he arrives and asks to explain, and the protagonist is surprised that it's goo. Everyone there laughs, and he asks to speak with the protagonist privately. Survived for 2 days, but then one of the guys tells him not to be disrespectful, because the only thing they can do is pray for their safe return. And inside, the prota continues. Against that fox, she grows increasingly desperate as he hurls ice at her. The protagonist realizes this is the first time she's felt pity, noting that she has no natural enemies or rival. She had only killed countless players and never imagined she would one day become prey. She starts to get scared, attacking him relentlessly, but the protagonist manages to escape by leaping to the side and dodging that monster's paw swipe. She continues searching for him in the surrounding area until she notices where he's coming from. The protagonist approaches her face and questions where she's looking. Looking, he slices at her eye, blinding her on one side. She begins to gather fire from all directions, launching it at him once again, but he continues to evade and throw attacks at her. As the monster suffers more and more from the relentless assault he's delivering, it becomes increasingly frightened, fleeing from the boy and retreating, gathering a huge bijudama in order to throw it at the protagonist. He says that she is really dramatic and asks why she is still resisting, even though she knows that she is going to die. So, he raises his hand, gathering power from the Ice Queen, saying that it is already too late. And so, he summons several ice spikes to impale the monster, piercing it completely and killing it. And when he finally ends, he falls to the ground exhausted, having defeated the gray fox and receiving the fox's core as a reward. And after a while, they notice that they are leaving, and, with no chance, they actually close the portal, and it only took 13 hours, closing faster than the last group. And so, they say that the portal has turned green. Players will exit the portal, and, among all of them, the first two, asking, leave is Shaminu, from the SH Guild. As soon as he leaves, they say that they would like an interview, ordering the injured to be brought there, and they begin to take everyone away on stretchers, and he leaves with the protagonist in his arms, and the protagonist receives treatment. So, they inform him that they've completed administering first aid, and ask if he wants to go straight to the hospital. But he declines, saying he'd like to at least offer an explanation. Then, they ask if it's true that he led the players and shut down Dongjul, asking him to share his feelings and questioning whether the gray fox actually had 9 tails, adding that his name is currently the most searched term. Then, he begins to speak, but notices that this feeling and this praise, even though it's directed at the wrong person, becomes addictive after experiencing it a few times. So, he remembers back to when he was a child, and the teacher asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up. And the boy says that when he grew up, he would become a great hero just like Specter. So, he speaks to the reporters honestly, saying that he isn't the one who should be interviewed, because now he's going to say what. That's what really happened inside the portal. Sometime later, the protagonist wakes up in Hanguk Hospital with T by his side, who tells him it's 6 a.m. and asks how he's feeling. He says that he's fine. She tells him that while he was out, she was reviewing the cooperation requests they received. He was right about waking up early. He asks if it's serious, but she asks where he's going, since he got up and is leaving. He replies that he's going to see President Choi Po, as he must be anxious. But she speaks to John R., saying that he still hasn't recovered, and he says he just used up all his Mayol energy and will take some time off after meeting the real patient, so they should go to her. And with that, he heads to the... So, he asks everyone to leave. Seeing the protagonist say that he hasn't changed at all, the protagonist, recognizing the voice, realizes it really is Goo, and asks what happened. President, who is happy that he came, but asks if he's alright, as he heard that he collapsed inside the portal. The protagonist confirms it's true, explaining that he was a little tired, so it was like that, taking a nap, which calms the president, who then takes him to his daughter's room. When the protagonist opens the door, he sees her lying there, with tubes connected to her arms, and he says that her condition is worse than he expected, saying he has to hurry and pulling out the fox core. As soon as he removes it, the president is terrified and says he forgot, because it's dangerous for normal people to be near the core due to the heat, asking if he could wait outside. He replies that he should have asked this before, but is it really okay to use something so dangerous on his daughter because he is worried? He says of course it is, because not everyone can handle it, but he knows the method that Spectro used, so he doesn't need to be afraid, and he assumes that Delg informed him of the method, and Pro Miguel confirms that's right. Then the president asks him to please take care of his daughter, and he says it won't take long, and as soon as they find Sev, the president leaves, and the boy approaches his daughter, telling him that she's in worse condition than the patient he healed before. For now, he'll use the core's heat to gradually melt the ice magic. Then he notices something, and the system informs him that he's sensing an intermediate energy emanating from the target, which he can absorb using his freeze ability. Prota is surprised and it is said that due to this absorption, his magic stat will increase, which surprises him even more since the rank X freeze skill is a skill without weaknesses. It's a skill that excels in both attack and defense. Furthermore, it's stated that it can even increase his magic state and absorb energy, something that not even the Observer of Darkness from, just like he said, reminding him that he would go bald. He starts to get irritated because that's the first thing he says after all these years. He says that Haney's could accomplish. However, he then realizes that this is the first time this ability has ever done this. He wonders if the Observer of Darkness has encountered magic similar to the attribute of darkness. He thinks it might be worth checking out, but he can do that later because, for now, he needs to focus on treating the 9 Yin syndrome. If he doesn't hurry, the patient will suffer even more. He needs to get rid of all the yin energy inside her, and he's going to do it all at once. And so, he begins to draw the energy from the woman, saying that, when he was a Specter, he used yang energy from his core to force the magic to dissipate, which placed a huge burden on the patient's body, but there was nothing he could do about it. And, this time, it will be the opposite. He will expel the yin energy and absorb it little by little until it reaches equilibrium, making it much safer than using the core. And outside, the president is quite distressed and notices the door opening, calling out to him. Prota then exits, and the president asks how his daughter is doing. Prota replies that everything went well, but she is completely fine, and there shouldn't be any side effects. And the president starts crying, collapsing to the floor, overcome with emotion. And so, their vacation begins as soon as they return to the line of succession. It is also advisable to avoid any kind of physical activity for a while. He agrees, but thinks he managed to do everything right on this mission, thanking his secretary, who is happy with this development. And so, he says that he has been thinking a lot about how he should repay him for it. And the president says he considered increasing the payment even more, but he thinks that he wouldn't want something like that. And the protagonist says that he only did what he had to do, and his gratitude alone is enough. But then he says that's what he decided, and if at any damn guy he knows is always like this, and that he's an idiot for expecting something more exciting. But the protagonist asks if that's what he was expecting, asking, so, even after time he needs help, they, the Mongo Group, will help him in any way possible. And as Korea's #1 company, the Mongo Group, it can be said that there is no place in Korea in which the group holds no sway. However, their true weapon lies in the fact that their eldest son, Cho, is the guild master of the Scarlet Tower, the 5th largest guild in the country, and securing them as reinforcements when needed would be a tremendous advantage. He also says he'll be careful not to damage the group's reputation, and the president replies that the boy just needs to keep him informed about everything, because June is the savior of his family. And then, already with Doc G, he mentions that he just received a call from the president. He's being overly affectionate because his daughter is feeling better, and he's also asking how he is. June R's body feels, and he says that all he's feeling is a slight soreness in his muscles. And Dekko asks if he's taking something to become like Captain Homeland or something, but he says he isn't taking chance, because he leveled up a lot that day and gained a multitude of recovery abilities, and that's the reason why. So they get straight to the point, pulling out the core right in front of Dekko. He's taken aback. It seems that that is the Gray Fox's core, and the protagonist mentions that he didn't need to use it on the president's daughter because he absorbed some of the yin energy with his freeze and dogu abilities. It goes crazy, and he can do it. He says that the system confirmed it, and furthermore, it increased his magic stat. He discovered something good. The freeze skill can absorb energy from anything. So he thinks that if he can do that, not only with diseases like Novan syndrome, but he can also absorb energy from items. And Doc Go says he was imagining what he was trying to say, but he was just telling him to acquire an item. Well, and he says that now they are on the same page, mentioning that there is something that could be a problem, because baldness in a man, that's just, it's cruel. Cruel. Just to be clear, I'm not bald, okay? Far be it from me to be balding, but come on, don't talk about the guys who are balding. No. Novinho's syndrome was classified as intermediate, and Dec Go is surprised that an incurable disease is only intermediate. This means that absorbing normal items won't be enough. The effect, and Prota thinks that's probably the reason. So Day says he understands and will look for suitable items, and the boy should also search the player market. He's referring to the player market. It's been a while since he's been in there, but Doc Go asks him not to cause any problems. He questions what makes Doc Go think he would cause trouble, and I think you would too, right? Let's be honest, to be sincere. And so, he talks a bit about the player market, which is an offline market that operates all over the world, where you can buy information and countless items, unlike the portals, and that's why it's so popular, even among ordinary people. He wonders how long it's been since he last went to Insadong, noting that it had become much more crowded, but it was still a very busy place. Empty, with everyone focused on surviving. He's happy that he achieved that peace, but instead of the regular market, he has business to take care of in the black market. And so, once inside, he sees various people watching a show. He heads to room 8, seat G10, and mentions that the cinema in the player market has a special chair that functions as a teleportation zone to the black market. And he recalls one of his former companions mentioning that teleportation in the market is very unreliable. They do everything they can with the portal resources, but she questions how the teleportation still causes nausea, and tells Spectro that he will use his magic. He hopes to see them soon as they teleport to that black market in Ethiopia, the underground city. Underground. Upon arriving, he comments that the atmosphere is very different from the regular market, and it's impossible to see unless you are one of the selected few. And all the player is greater than is greater than. In Doj, you'll notice that he hasn't changed even a little bit. The protagonist mentions that he hasn't either. He looks a bit chubbier here. But then he asks why the doctors reacted that way, and why they were so. Markets in the world are just doors that lead to that place. But there he sees people from Escatina and looks back. And they question that it seems Jong of the Nine Heavens hasn't been seen in a while. Then they ask how long the association will conceal the Specter, and the protagonist explains that, in the black market, there are no ordinary guides or vendors. It's an underground world where common sense doesn't apply. Looking to the side, they spot John Raw, the one who closed the incomplete portals. The protagonist remarks that, while it's not entirely safe, there's little chance of him encountering the player who would pose a threat, considering most of the strong players have ascended, and those remaining are either too weak to advance to the second floor, or they went but couldn't endure the pressure there. And if their level is that low, he can easily handle them. As they stand before the protagonist, he simply orders them to leave, and one of them is paralyzed with fear. And the protagonist thinks that was surprisingly easy. Then he approaches a bald man. The man is surprised, as he didn't expect a celebrity to visit. The protagonist says he came to see some artifacts, and the man, he says that everything he saw in that life, all those artifacts, are telling him to look outside, and so he notices that he didn't expect much, but he ended up being right on the money, because he's feeling a cold energy of low level on that target, and various other inimical energies, as well as intermediate level freezing energy. He thinks that, even though it is of low level, he will be able to increase his magic with those items. So he talks to the old man who, now that he thinks about it, heard from some newbies that some of the better items in the store are actually kept in a different room. The old man is quite surprised, saying that this is not true, and who would say something like that? And he says he already knew, because he's really bad at lying. He asks to just let him take a look, as he is going to buy some, scared when everything should have been over. So Dokigo didn't even know how to broach the subject, but he gradually starts telling him, explaining that 25 years ago, as soon as they finished uniting with items from there too, and then he will keep his secret. And he questions who the bastard was who said that, showing the room to Prota, telling him to come in, saying that they are all the best artifacts, ordering him to enter. The protagonist comments that everything looks great, but he doesn't see anything with a darkness attribute, noting that they are indeed rare. Then he notices the ice attribute, but the old man tells him not to touch it, because that one has a strong aura that will freeze the user's body. But the protagonist calmly puts on the glove, leaving the old man completely stunned, and that is the gauntlet that carries the wrath and a curse of a rare rank ice fairy. And when he puts that thing on, he begins to feel an intermediate level freezing energy and realizes he can purify that thing. He says that since intermediate is at the same level, the Nine Shines syndrome will be able to have the same amount of magic as it did last time. And then he declares that he's going to buy it and the artifacts from before. The old man is overjoyed and can only thank him profusely. Then, the protagonist goes to a bar, and when he enters, everyone stares at him. He politely asks to be teleported to the Insadong market in Korea and also orders something to drink. The bartender assures him everything is in order, mentioning the teleportation wait time is 10 minutes. Everyone then focuses their attention on the Forter. A rising star who happens to be there calls out to the protagonist, talking about him and asking if he's the famous player, John R., and mentions he's heard a lot about his little Robai. So he, as his senpai, is quite proud. And the protagonist remarks how he didn't think the black market was a place to linger, since a player's reputation is extremely important and dictates their wear, requests for cooperation, and their acceptance into guilds. However, consistently achieving significant accomplishments in portals is difficult, making reputation building a challenge. So, the Queen, all the players received the same message, congratulating everyone because the Frost Queen had been defeated. They are surprised that June succeeded, and as a result, safe zones will start appearing on. Cowardly players attempt this by attacking the protagonist and breaking his glass. The ugly brute then says that his senpai is addressing the protagonist. They begin to harass the protagonist, that he's uneducated, and they need to teach him some manners. Then, he tells them that they can keep the streets safe, and he can walk around freely because of them, and then they start cursing at the protagonist. Then he starts laughing hysterically at those suckers, making fun of everyone. He asks them how they keep their streets safe, saying that's what high-ranking players do. High-rankers do, not some nobodies like them, saying that all they can do is go after the weak newbies and then get their names in the newspapers, asking if that's not right. He really doesn't like what the protagonist is saying. He tells them that they don't need to be afraid and can look up, because he too will feel better after giving a shitty smile just like theirs. And that's why they become terrified of our protagonist. When the three of them are face to face with the protagonist, who is itching to beat everyone to a pulp, the people around them start wondering if that guy, it's not Joao R, because if he loses there, the newspapers will go wild. But still, it was worth asking, are they ganging up against a player who has barely debuted? How pathetic. And so, that redhead says he can say whatever he wants, because all that matters is the result. Junro is the player who defeated the Grey Fox, and he's going to fall to Gengar's trio. And the protagonist asks how long it will be until the teleport, and the bartender says it's about 4 minutes. Then the protagonist says that's more than enough time to play around, as he comes face to face with the halberd-wielding guy. Afraid of what the protagonist might do, he starts swinging the halberd wildly, pointing it at the protagonist and claiming to be the Grim Reaper spearman of the trio. He says the protagonist should feel sequels, especially since the sequels are being forgotten, and I want to keep up with many of the series that I've already covered here. So, 1 week of new releases, and the other week dedicated to sequels. Earth and all the people in the world celebrated, crying tears of joy. But the world didn't let that joy last even for a minute, and that's when it said that a dimensional elevator was installed on, honored to fight him. But then he asks what that dagger he's holding is, because he thought the protagonist was a swordsman, and the protagonist talks about the dagger, saying he doesn't need a sword to shut down the insults. Then, that idiot gets filled with rage and attacks the protagonist, but he sees the attack coming and dodges it just by moving his torso, grabbing the spear and pulling him close. And when he gets close enough, he elbows the crazy guy right in the face, surprising everyone, instantly drawing blood and knocking him out. Sleep. And when he falls unconscious to the ground, the hooded guy says he's an idiot for falling for such an obvious feint. Then, the redhead asks if he can block it, casting the magic towards the protagonist, who dodges those mana darts. And the other one says he can come at him, preparing to attack, but the protagonist manages to defend all of his attacks very calmly. And the Bada, redhead says he's just a newbie who's killed some monsters and bets that he's never killed a person before. And inexperienced people will lower their guard when they're sure they can win. But at that moment, they are going to die. And he questions whether Prota understood their difference, because that's the difference between the two of them. They never planned to stop halfway with Prota, but his friend ends up on the ground, and Prota actually breaks his arm without any mercy. Looking back, he sees that the redhead is completely lost, and he questions what happened. What happened? Because he's just a rookie, but he finished off the trio of gangsters. So, he prepares some more magic, saying that this isn't possible and it's not over yet, throwing it on top of the prota. But he says that, in Specter's generation, the reason he was able to kill so many enemies was because of the ability he gained to read their breathing. And with that, Pacific Ocean, and the second floor is now open. Everyone was scared to death when they saw this, and they were told to go to the border area if possible. But they ask, what the fuck is this? What is going on? Manages to advance, stopping all his attacks, and getting close enough to corner him against the wall, saying that his breathing is too obvious. So, he pins that guy's hand to the, topping it off with his dagger, piercing through and pinning him there. So, he continues shouting, and when the protagonist turns to go to the spearman, he asks if he will happen to see him there. Then, he says, of course not. They won't even glance at his shadow. And the protagonist sees that they understood the message very well, while everyone keeps saying that he won. And a newbie defeated 3 experienced players. And that's incredible, telling them to tell the reporters that John Ra was very awesome. And so, he thinks the world has become strange because they are acting like players in a game and people who kill for their own selfish desires. Besides the people who scream for the winner instead of caring for the injured. And so, the bartender says that the teleport is ready, and the protagonist says that there are only 3 ways to survive in a world like this. That's from another manhwa. And by the way, guys, I'm about to bring you the continuation of the already released Manhwa chapters, so you can, waiting for good things to happen. And he mentions that the first path is to go crazy dealing with them, in addition to suppressing your emotions or suffering in silence. Ash then returns to reality. When he leaves, he misses his friends. Then, a video of him nailing that guy's hand to the wall goes viral all over the internet. And a blonde guy mentions that this video surfaced from the black market just a few minutes ago. He managed to defeat 3 players who were at level 20 with his overwhelming skill. He greatly surpassed expectations, and then he asks what the princess thinks. So she continues, looking with disdain, but she's still interested, asking what his name was again. We then see the protagonist taking a photo with a girl, but he questions why he's even doing. Is that the second floor already? They're wondering if this means the Ice Queen wasn't the final boss. Then, the system instructs them to remain steadfast until they reach the final floor. And after that, the players from that. Then a whole crowd of people appear in a line to take a photo with him. He's very surprised by this. Then he thinks that if he keeps going like this, he won't be able to go to bed until nightfall. But then, they arrive calling for Jar, and that girl goes to meet him and asks if they can talk for a bit, and the protagonist notices that light orange hair and a strong, warm aura that he can feel just by being near her. And there's only one person who fits that description, one of the members of the 6 great guilds, the Princess of Cabe Gonha. She gave him her card, saying that he's not a stranger, and he replies that he knew that. Afterwards, while waiting for Kabar, she keeps an eye on him. It's a good feeling, and she says that, if he's okay with it, they can go to a coffee shop to talk. He agrees to this, since he has to get out of there, and he manages a complete escape. And, arriving at the cafe, he sits down with her, and she says that she hates leaving the house and hates the heat, but she still has to wear those masks. He asks if she doesn't have a fire ability. She says, that's the problem, she likes cold things. And the protagonist remembers that they say even demons have, scared of her. But he wonders if this girl is truly the Princess of Abe. Then, she asks what the Cabe Guild wants with him, and questions whether he wants to join them. And the protagonist was startled, commenting that it was quite fast. She explains that the vice leader instructed her to recruit him, and that going through all the bureaucracy takes too long. She had been planning to decided after speaking with him, but he passed. He questions what she means when she says that his achievements came first, and that they are more than enough for them to personally come and speak with him, the so famous super newbie. And he reflects that, in reality, no one at his level has accomplished what he has. Then, she concludes that he is also skilled in terms of combat sense and future potential. He questions the world, the association, and the politicians gathered for a large meeting. After a lengthy discussion, they dispatched an expeditionary force to the border, and the second floor was a land of whether she has heard about what happened at the black market. She responds that she enjoyed it and that he is a good fighter. And lastly, she wanted to confirm his main ability, asking if it is only even a stream and a D-rank weapon. He agrees, mentioning it's at least on his fake profile, but she retorts that, since that's the case, she wants even more from him, telling him to think about it, since he only has one chance. A D-rank skill is already at this level, making him wonder what would happen if he gained more skills. And if he joins her guild, he will have access to various skill books. Not only that, His coordinators will give him a training schedule, and the protagonist thinks this is amazing because they not only have great benefits and resources, but the incentives and salary are higher than those of the association. And that's why all the strong players left there, because there's a reason why the guilds are doing so well. Furthermore, she says that they are one of the strongest guilds in the fast world, and they also have more information about the second floor than the association does, asking if he doesn't think it would be better to join them instead of staying there at the association, asking what he even wants. He's going to do it, and she thinks there's no way he can refuse since they are dokebi. She went to see him about being a team leader, but the protagonist simply refuses, and she says it's alright, saying that he's being informal, assuming that he accepted. But then she's surprised, asking why, and he thinks that if he joins dokebi, he'll be able to gain fame and wealth, but there's no such thing as a free lunch. His orders will be absolute, and he will have to do all of their missions. And it may be good for him now, but one day he will end up feeling chained down. She asks if he hasn't understood what she said. He says he knows that the Kville Guild made a good offer, but then she questions why he refused it, and he asks if she's ever heard that the head of the snake is better than opportunity. Humanity not only acquired new magic and technologies, but also gained access to a vast amount of resources and knowledge. Proto then questions what all of this implies, and the tail of the dragon, and she says that she understands, and thinks about that saying he mentioned, because he's smarter than she thought, and even if he were to come to dokebi, it would take some time to climb the ranks, and also because a place where only the elite enter would have enormous competition. Then she asks if he really isn't going to enter, and he apologizes. Then she says she doesn't have anything. There's nothing he can do, and it's not like she can force him to enter, but she says it's just personal advice, telling him that it's good to be careful. He questions if she's going after revenge, saying that she doesn't believe it. But the girl says that they aren't that spoiled, and says that the demons are more active now on the first floor as well. And he questions if she means that they are planning something. And she says that's probably the case, because the association probably doesn't know yet. And that's why she's telling him. And if he bumps into them without knowing and is attacked, she will be disappointed. So he just thanks her, and the girl says she'll see him another day, calling him Snakehead. He finds it strange and goes back to Dyokigu, talking about everything he learned, and he questions about the demons starting to move again. And the protagonist says that the dokebi is sincere with him, so what he says must be true. He mentions he knew their intelligence was better than others, but that's not the main point. And, by the way, he asks if he won't regret refusing the offer, especially since Gong Joha went to see him in person, but the protagonist says not really. After all, of course he would win fame and money with them, but he has no interest in those things. And he asks why that person is making that face, wondering if he wants him to go for free. He clarifies that's not it, he just thought they would be more useful to him. However, the protagonist doesn't like this conversation at all, saying that the guilds are strict, while he and the association let him do whatever he wants, telling him not to worry about it. Dyok-gu says that this created a prosperous world, but Proto replies that's not what he's asking about. Then Dyok-gu clarifies that there are a total of 10 floors, and that the dimensional elevator has a total of 10 floors. With that, the dokebi gets all giddy and says that's right, laughs, mentioning that they're going to renew his contract tomorrow and that he's going to give him an entire floor as well. And the protagonist is somewhat grateful, but asks if everything is really okay. And he confirms, saying he is someone big wants, and his budget is considerable. He mentions that once they gather information, they will start trying to measure up. The protagonist is happy about this and expresses his gratitude, but then he asks which floor he should go to. Dugo tells him it will be floor 77. He says he'll go get his things, but then he speaks with Dyok-go, asking him to schedule the Eastern Sea Portal raid for a week from now, and Dyok-go asks if that much time is really necessary. Then he questions whether the Predator is going after the demons, and he confirms that's correct, because after setting the bait on the hook, he'll have to wait, and that's how you catch a really big tilapia. And then it's announced in the newspaper that Junro will attempt to close the Eastern Sea Portal, something that has never happened before. If he succeeds, Korea will become the first safe region in the world, with no incomplete portals, and the association, Korean Players, has confirmed the renewal of Mr. John Roe's contract, further solidifying their partnership. Furthermore, it's said that John Roe declined an offer from the Cabre Guild in order to remain with the association. The super rookie announced his intention to enter the Eastern Sea Portal, and the entire world is watching to see how he plans to accomplish it. And within that context, that crazy guy, the demons are lying in wait, watching the protagonist, and then rise up to take action, emerging from the fifth circle of hell, where he resides. sending his shadow up from the ground. Then, the shadow asks if he summoned her, and that thing receives information from the protagonist, who asks if this is the man he should pursue. He confirms that this is the one who possesses the storm, and then that thing replies that they had said it was in Tochar's inventory. The protagonist is very surprised because it took him and his friends 5 years to defeat the Ice Queen. If they had cleared 5 floors in 25 years, they should be on the 7th floor. But, considering their luck of Tochar, but he explains that he deliberately concealed it from the public and that he was the one who uncovered the evidence proving that Tochar Visht was killed by a demon. He will be cautious of them. Then, the shadow asks if she should go to the 1st floor. He says they don't have any proof yet, and it's not worth risking going against the association, especially not at a time like this. He asks if there's anyone left they can use, and the shadow says that if they're talking about the 1st floor, what about the Shadow Brothers, who they were planning to use at the Vegas auction? They are power-hungry and exceptionally skilled, even among demons. So, he orders them to be sent to the Eastern Sea portal this time, because it doesn't matter if they kill his Junro or something else. But then he sees someone watching them, looking back in fear, but ultimately sees no one. Then, he notices it's the Sword Saint, asking the shadow to prepare to be able to leave. She simply evades the question, and he gets angry about it, talking about Kim Wong-jong, the Sword Saint of the 9 Heavens. And even though he's an archer, he doesn't have enough range, and if not, had it been up to him, he would have recovered the storm. He's just toying with him. Then, Carl Signer recalls Zhuao R saying that he will be watching him until his luck runs out. And so, meanwhile, Proto wonders if they took the bait, referring to those Americans, the Shadow Brothers, and asks if they will join Ride as doctors. He says this is completely suspicious, but he wonders if he can ask Secretary Cha to keep an eye on them. And now he begins to invoke his power, a shadow that emerges from his body and takes over the entire area. He says he will spread it, energy across the ground to train his magic, which is a bit dangerous, but the method that Sky taught him brings better results, and so he does this, and it's like he's saying hi. He won't. The rest of the players were too weak, which is why only the 5 of them went to Antarctica. So, realistically speaking, they should probably be on the 5th floor. Then he asks, be able to avoid everything by using Dark Observation rank S at the portal. So he starts training to prepare himself. And sometime later, at the Eastern Sea portal, on Dragon Island, Forgotten, he says that, based on the name alone, the boss is probably some kind of dragon, and dragons are among the strongest high-level creatures. The objective is simple: defeat the nameless dragon. It's a boss that beginners can't even touch. He tried fighting them a few times, but it was complicated because he didn't have any flying skills and would just get angry on the ground trying to attack them. He says he'll have to grab onto it and fight on the creature's back or knock it down. But then he thinks of something when he receives a message from Che with the information about the Brothers of Shadows, as he requested. He notices that the girl is really fast, and the Shadow Brothers, Vincent and Edva, are a duo from the United States whose specialty is escorting VIPs, and are veterans with more than 200 completed missions. They are a special case where both brothers awakened the shadow ability, and that's what was said in the interview regarding the decision to go to the Eastern Sea portal. But then they ask why they are going to that particular portal. They state that they sensed Sejunro's immense determination while maintaining a straight face. Possible. They question if they are implying that this is a guaranteed victory. He responds that they will claim it is merely admiration, as he is a player who consistently achieves the impossible, and they are honored to be able to assist him in closing the last uncompleted gate in Korea. Consequently, the protagonist wonders if he will be able to utilize it. Sometime later, in a location overflowing with trash, the day of the Eastern Sea portal raid finally arrives. In front of that portal, everyone begins to crowd together, surrounded by a multitude of reporters, and Deok-go asks Zhao Rose if he isn't, what floor humanity is currently on, and notices that Deok-go is barely speaking. The protagonist questions why he's being so quiet, already sensing something bad. Deok-go then says that, in the last 25 years, humanity has only nervous. He replies that he is incredibly nervous. Deok-go initially thought he wasn't nervous, but is even more surprised when he admits to being nervous. Yes. And the protagonist says that the game is crashing way too much, so the protagonist told him to buy a new cell phone, asking why he was still using that old thing, because the device he's using is practically Jurassic. But he says that, anyway, why is he getting distracted like this? Because this is the portal with the 500 reporters, and he insists that he's not distracted or nervous. After all, why would he be nervous about a dragon that doesn't even have a name yet? And Dioku agrees, but he's not going alone. Then he brings up the Shadow Brothers and the fact that there aren't any other participants. This implies that they must be working with the demons. They are strong, and he's nervous about them having to protect their rear. But then he says that they don't have definitive proof, but it's just a feeling he has. He wants to cancel the raid because he's far too uneasy. But the protagonist tells him not to worry so much, because even if they attack, he has a plan in place. And at that moment, with two people approaching John R., they claim to be his fans and have heard that he closed 2 incomplete portals with such a slender frame. It's unbelievable. And the protagonist says it's nothing special, but he says it with them speaking in English. They consider it a great courtesy, as they didn't expect him to speak English. He mentions having a friend in England. So one of them mentions that the Vita's translation has a slight delay, so they were concerned, but it should be fine. They discuss Korea's last uncompleted gate and acknowledge its significance, pledging to give their all. However, the protagonist tells them not to worry, as he has come prepared for anything, and so it's mentioned that the players are from different countries, but they greet each other amicably, and if manage to clear the second floor. The protagonist can hardly believe it and almost falls backward. Then, Dekgo says he doesn't even know what to say, and the protagonist replies that it's been 25 years. 25 fucking years. And after all, they succeed. Korea will become the safest zone in the world. Following this, they ask when he believes players get most nervous when entering a portal. And the answer is, when they enter, unaware of the climates or monsters that await them. Their instincts are heightened as they step through the portal. But this hyper-focus comes with a risk. Because they are so focused on the fight ahead, they react more slowly to attacks from behind. They believe they see an opening to attack Prota, but then the brother behind him notices his sibling and asks Edward why he stopped. He then speaks to Vincent, telling him to wait, because something makes him question whether it truly is an opening to attack Prota from behind. Apparently, he knows everything, and he becomes afraid. Just then, the portal collapses. They find themselves inside the dungeon, and Edward thinks he missed a golden opportunity, but Vincent calls out to him, asking if it's an island. Then he says they failed this time, but they will create another opportunity. They begin to survey their surroundings, and Eva comments on how windy it is, saying she didn't expect there to be such place like this inside a portal. Then he asks where the nameless dragon or something is, since he doesn't see any monsters around. One of them speaks to Joao R, asking him if he is seeing something, and the protagonist thinks something is strange, because the portal boss doesn't even have a proper name, yet it feels like a 1-star portal, and so, he really sees that something is wrong with them, as they are being covered by a shadow. When they notice and look up, they see a gigantic dragon in the sky, and that dragon is looking at them. Edward notices that that dragon is the nameless dragon. Nameless, and they think he is huge, now that they've finally confirmed the location of that Leviathan in the sky, and they ask how they are going to kill it, talking about Junro, but the boy has already disappeared from there. They curse at. But to continue, I need to know that you enjoyed the video. So, don't forget to like the older videos that you want me to continue, because that's how I know you're interested. And, this time, they're telling him that they've only managed to clear a single floor. Dekgo says it might sound like an excuse, but there's a good reason for it. The protagonist then says he's willing to listen. Him, asking where the protagonist went. Then, one of them says that they don't have a chance, since they can't even feel his presence, and he's already on top of the dragon. And so, the forgotten dragon, appearing before them in the middle of the sky, amidst the storm, he begins to hurl lightning bolts at them, and Proto watches everything from atop the trees, instructing them to report whether they are working with demons or not. The two dodge the lightning, growing increasingly frustrated. Then, he summons the shadow soldiers, invoking Sung right there in the middle of the field. Then Edward screams to Vincent, saying that he will distract the dragon so that Vincent can find a way to kill it. Vincent questions whether Edward will be alright alone, but Edward asks Vincent who he thinks he is, ordering him to bring it to him as soon as he finds it. And so Vincent agrees, while trying to strike the dragon, but the dragon doesn't seem that affected by the shadow attacks. At that moment, Vincent runs off, asking, when was the last time things went this badly? Because if it's like the Vegas auction, they're dead. But then he notices something, seeing a shadow to the side. He thinks it's just a newbie, who can't even conceal his aura, asking if the protagonist is present, and stating that Hung is currently fighting. They require his assistance, so he shouldn't create problems and should accompany them, him attacking the protagonist's shadow. However, he realizes that it isn't the real protagonist, but merely a magical construct, and he notices that the trees and bushes have made the area dark and filled with shadows, which should be ideal for his shadow ability. However, he wonders what this unpleasant sensation is, and Vincent is left wondering what is happening, because his magical aura had been remarkably strong, but now it has completely vanished, and he can't see the protagonist anywhere. But then, the protagonist remarks that they truly are demons and a disgrace, appearing behind him and giving disgrace, just because he's curious about how ridiculous the reason must be. And he says, it's simply the Ice Queen's core, and the Prota is quite surprised by this, and he says that the third floor is a volcanic area. That's sniff, and by the time he realizes it, it's too late, because the protagonist is too close, and he wonders when he got there. Then he speaks to John R., asking what he means and what. The protagonist spoke in English, so Vincent must have understood him when he told him to stop pretending they weren't demons. But then Vincent tells him he's making false accusations because he attacked him, asking if he was upset since he was the one the protagonist extracted from first. So what he did makes sense, and the protagonist says it's a good try, but he should have at least hidden those red eyes before, the scarlet eyes of demons. Then he realizes he messed up and lost control of them. He realizes it's because no one ever suspected he was a demon before. And the protagonist wonders if he can't control them, and Vincent asks if he thought he would get scared and run away if he was discovered, but that would be a pretty cowardly way to die. He picks up his sword again, activating his shadow ability. So it is said that demon clans appear very rarely in portals, but if you kill them and drink their blood, becoming a demon in exchange for suppressing his emotions and developing violent tendencies, it grants him the ability to wield demonic energy, which Vincent claims is inexplicably stimulating every time he uses it. So, he tells Prota that he's going to get rid of his useless legs first, to stop him from darting from side to side, and attacks the boy's legs. But Prota remains still, staring at him, using Shadow Walker to evade the attack, stepping out of the way, and startling Vincent. He asks where Prota went, but he's Prota, enveloped in Prota's dark energy, who appears behind him, and says that at first, all he could do was slightly conceal his presence. But then, when he sees him try to attack, volcanic, and therefore, some players who can withstand the heat of the magma are able to explore there. And after a long time, they manage to find an altar in the middle of the ocean of dumping it in another corner, saying that, over time, he got used to it and started working on other aspects: instinct, sound, smell, magical aura. He questions, what will happen next is that he will completely imbue him, finishing off Vincent. Meanwhile, the other one is there with the dragon, thinking that he won't even emerge from behind the clouds. Then, Edward sees someone returning, and Vincent appears, calling out to him. He asks why he's alone and where June is. He then says that something is strange about him, because he knew they were demons. Even when he used demonic energy, he couldn't find him, and that bastard was hiding his true strength. But then Vincent asks how he escaped, because if he's so strong, how come he didn't kill him? And he says that what he felt was definitely real. But then he tells him that he fell for his lies, questioning why he would waste the chance to kill him while they're separated. But he thinks it doesn't matter, since he should forget about it and help him with that dragon, as he needs someone to attack the dragon while drawing its attention. But then he questions if he is really that strong. He responds that it's not just that, but he's incredibly annoying because attacks from the ground are useless against him. However, dragons do have a weak point. Reverse scale is a scale located on the opposite side from the others, hence the name. Then, he notices that he's going to use shadow movement to get there, but the dragon anticipates their intention and begins to attack. Prepare an attack down below. So Edward orders Vincent to dodge, and they are nearly hit by that absurd attack. But the shadows will target Vasco, which is adjacent to that, and he says that took damage because its soldiers were killed. Then, Vincent calls for his older brother, but his brother tells him to forget about him and focus on the objective. He agrees, gathering a spear and preparing to lava, and the altar requires the Ice Queen's core to cool the place down. And Prota asks if they found the core, and then Dugu apologizes, as he is embarrassed, because they searched. Attack up there, trying to reach the dragon, and he actually manages to wound the dragon's cheek, but the damage isn't that significant, and he says he missed, but even so, it's flying lower. Now, he uses shadow movement to approach, climbing onto the dragon's back. But upon closer inspection, he wonders if the dragon is even higher than he thought, while the protagonist is down below, observing them and calling them both idiots. After taking that damage, Vincent returns to Edward's side, injured, and tells him that they are screwed. But then Edward asks what he is talking about. Then, the dragon attacks the two of them, once again throwing lightning. He explains that, of course, the dragon would react like this if they attacked its reverse scale. People who have never fought dragons always make this mistake, because even though the reverse scale is a weak point, if you touch anything around it, the dragon will feel threatened and will become even more violent. And if the dragon is enraged, that item might not be enough. Then, the protagonist wonders if he should use the bow this time, drawing it back and preparing to pulling them back and telling them not to die yet. Those damned demons are asking him to buy time, as if he's just going to wait there peacefully. So, they continue fighting against the dragon alone, suffering like hell. And Edward tells his brother not to talk because it will distract him. He keeps wondering when that thing will stop, questioning whether the nameless dragon's attack is infinite, but he realizes he messed up, with even more attacks coming his way. However, the dragon is shot right in the middle of the head and begins to stagger. The brothers wonder if it was June R, noticing that the boy is there, and it is him. He says that it would be complicated for June R if they died there, because there's no way he could defeat the dragon alone. In the end, for it numerous times, but they couldn't find it. And Prota then thinks that this is obvious, since he absorbed the core himself. So he says there's nothing to do, and the three of them are going to have to work together. He says that the dragon will start focusing on him. If he continues attacking, they should take advantage of that chance to retreat. But the dragon comes at them, and only them. The protagonist is surprised by the two, as they are only running away instead of trying to counterattack, and realizes that they are trying to make the dragon. He focuses his aim on it, but says it was bad, because that oasis they are seeing is just a mirage. Once again, he aims only at the bow, but this time at the clouds, and as soon as he gathers his dark energy into that arrow, he releases it with absurd force. So, he thinks that will be enough, wondering if he should go after those puppies now. Then one of them thinks about Jum, cursing him, mentally, wondering why he stopped attacking. But then the attack comes at them, with the protagonist appearing there, looking at the two, saying that they should be hunting and not playing tag. They question that crazy guy about why he is there, wondering if they weren't supposed to provide support, but the protagonist says he already did that. As they look up, he comes. Several stars then ascend towards the dragon, attacking it from behind and throwing it to the ground, making it fall right there on the beach. When they look back, they realize they didn't even manage to scratch the dragon, yet he accomplished that feat very easily, and his main weapon was a sword, making them wonder what it was. And the protagonist asks if they are impressed, because the storm is truly an incredible bow. It works really well with these skills too. And now he understands why Calcigner is so obsessed with that bow. And, seeing that he already knows everything, the two begin to beg, claiming that they helped in the fight, so he should talk to them, and he retorts that they are just henchmen and will give him information about his whereabouts we're unlucky, saying that everyone makes mistakes, and they have to understand this, with the straightest face possible, forgiving their mistake that never happened. So he says that if he commits exchange, he should let them go, but the protagonist simply tells them to screw off, because he has no interest in negotiating with people like them, and they've seen too much, so he can't let them go. And one of them, he asks if he thinks they'll die that easily, and goes all in against the protagonist, but the boy doesn't hesitate at all, ripping off his arm and head in one fell swoop. And with his brother seeing that Vincent died, he becomes desperate. Then Edvar goes all in on the protagonist, letting his hatred cloud his judgment, but the boy dodges his attack and pierces Edvar's stomach with the blade, and he asks how he could do that. And the protagonist just says that if there is an afterlife for insects like them, they should rethink what they did in this life, and they fall, wondering how this happened. And the protagonist looks at the next one, the dragon dying nearby, and he goes to finish it off, but the dragon looks at the dying protagonist with a somewhat crafty look, and the protagonist wonders what that face is all about, saying goodbye and finishing him off. The dragon finally closes its eyes, having defeated the nameless dragon, and finishing that hide, he receives the dragon bones, 20 kilograms of them, and levels up twice more. He says he'll look into it later and can finally test that ability, the ability he obtained from the Dawn Curse, the Confession of the Dead, which allows him to see the memories of dead things. Then, he sees the memory of those two, and begins to receive Vincente's memory, and a screen appears before him. He questions if that's all there is to it, saying it looks like a movie and has some cool mechanics. So, he takes a look at the search function, telling it to show the most recent memories, and with that, all the memories flood into the protagonist's head. They question why he is doing this to them, killing innocent people left and right. A mistake is fine, they're understanding, he says of course, asking how he couldn't be a pro. Then he wonders how he's going to tell them without irritating them all, but changes the subject, asking, People are saying they will give money, begging him to spare their son, spare their mother, and everything else. And the protagonist orders that memory to stop because he killed them too quickly and goes to search, ordering it to show anything related to the demon association. And in doing so, he actually spotted a shop Edward entered to gain access to information, and the guy inside tells him it's an order. He is to join the Korean Association's rookie at the Eastern Seagate, and he asks what that's all about, especially since they were preparing for the Vegas auction. But that guy tells him no, it doesn't matter what he says, because he's just the messenger delivering the orders. So, it was there that they received their orders, realizing that this shady place is where the Demon Association operates. He questions if there's anything else useful he can see, and notices the brothers commenting that they like their looks. And the person in front of them says he's going to turn them into second-rate items and give them power. And Prota realizes what it is, but ends up not being able to handle the memory because the skill rank is too low, preventing him from fully recovering the memory. The ability ends up being deactivated for the player's safety, and asks who the figure from that last memory was, wondering if it was a demon of a higher rank than them. But then, if he wants more information, he will have to evolve the skill from before, and he remembers something, because that ability isn't restricted to just humans. Then he looks at the dragon heading there, because a ridiculously powerful being like him, who doesn't even, compared to the Grey Fox, should already have a name at that level. Then he asks him to show what kind of being he was by activating the dragon's memory. But then he finds himself in front of a monk, and the monk says that it has been 5 years since the Great War between the nations ended, and he asks Your Majesty if he is hearing the joy of the people as they talk about his peaceful reign, for him to talk about his life and how things are going. And Dekko tells him about everything he's been through in these 25 years, and notices that it's already late, asking if he's hungry or if there's anything he wants. And he questions this, because he knows better than anyone that the war isn't over yet, and that was the memory of a human. And he says that the Great Republic is still entering through the northern lands. The protagonist doesn't understand anything that's happening. Then he notices that man is feeling ill. In fact, that king is dying, and he speaks to Byasa, asking if he knows the legend of Shinri Jong, who defends the Great Republic, and he asks if it's not just a superstition. And the king replies that's what he thinks. He continues, saying if the Great Republic really has such a dragon, then his people also need a Xinyang to protect them. He says that if he dies, they should burn his body and throw his ashes into the Eastern Sea, so he will become the nation's guardian dragon. And that monk speaks with the king, asking how he can refuse samsara and his karma, but the king says that he has lived in lust all his life, and at some point, he will fall and become a beast, so this is already his destiny. Then the protagonist is surprised, because the nameless dragon was once a human. He became the nation's guardian dragon, which means he was Mumu of Sila. So he just discovered this. The system states that he witnessed something unbelievable, and the protagonist kneels there, declaring that this land is now safe, asking the dragon to rest in peace. Thus, all of his scales vanish from his body, detaching and flying away. And the protagonist is even more surprised when the dragon tells him that it prayed for his soul and thanks him for it. And with that, it concludes the secret mission of the Island of the Nameless Dragon, and receives the Tide Breath Flute, as well as the title of Helper of Ascension. After completing that mission, he's surprised that it was something secret. Then he mentions that he not only leveled up, but also obtained a unique item, and he never imagined he would get something so amazing, because that item can grant him the following skills. Army, to eat. He says he'll take anything, but then points to the Seoul History Museum, asking if the place is really that famous. And then, he says he's going to head down to the first floor now, of the King's Expansion, and King's Purity, and he comments that making a mistake like that wasn't so bad after all. Then he finally completes the portal, and leaves to give an interview. Then, they notice that Jun, he left alone, which means the Shadow Brothers must be dead. They can't believe it, but the Shadow Brothers really did die there, and it just goes to show that no matter how successful you are, death is always sudden, and the Shadow Brothers were no exception. Then they realize the press conference is about to begin, and they're eager to hear what the protagonist has to say. When he arrives, he explains that the reason he left alone was because it was all his fault, and he breaks down crying. He says that they got lost in a labyrinth inside the portal, and not only that, but it was quite a distance from the entrance. And when he finally found his way out of the labyrinth, the nameless dragon had already killed the brothers. He laments that if he'd managed to escape just a little earlier, everything would have been different, and vows that he won't forget them. But then, the guy who's after the Ark ends up believing the protagonist's lie, exclaiming that that damn lucky guy is something else. Then, one of them speaks with Sinyi, asking what they're going to do about the Vegas auction, and Sinyi replies that he was the one who decided to send the Shadow Brothers, and he has to prepare for the first attack. No matter what, the Bloodhounds should have already arrived on the second floor, and he confirms that they have. The superiors said it would be a waste if they stayed on the first floor, but he tells them to ignore that for now, and Sombra asks what he means by that, saying the executives won't like it, and he asks if Sombra has already forgotten, since the Demon Association only cares about results, and the auction mission has to succeed, ordering him not to try to hinder his movements. He'll probably get beaten up or something, but it's better than failing and being decapitated, so he orders the Bloodhounds to be sent to the Vegas auction, stretching them thin and whatever the cost. Then the protagonist talks to Tie-In, because it's full of reporters and people down there, and it would be inconvenient if they went together. And the problem is, couldn't he just say he's leaving through the emergency exit and tell him to return? Another moment, asking why she didn't organize the cooperation requests this time. She says that she did organize them, already with dark circles under her eyes. He questions if all of these are requests for cooperation, and he agrees, mentioning it was because he closed the portal to the Eastern Sea, but then downplays his contribution. She counters that the reporters might say that, but the players know better. Luck is also a skill. Besides, she points out that they need to get their hair cut, as the boy is starting to look homeless. He questions if it's really necessary, since he's not a celebrity or anything, and she insists, saying his hair looked quite messy in the press conference photos. Then, she shows him the profiles of currently famous players, displaying a bunch of ridiculous faces to him. He retorts that their careers aren't as successful as his, but at least they aren't as sloppy. The protagonist is clearly displeased to hear this, and she asks if he doesn't have a day off, which he confirms. So, she hands him a card, urging him to go to this salon right away. He thinks to himself that he really misses wearing his mask right now. Then he agrees, saying she can go home early as well, and she asks if he's serious, and he says yes, because she worked hard to organize all those documents, and the girl is overjoyed. Overjoyed with that, thanking him and leaving quickly, also telling him to cut his hair. He notices that she actually got excited, but then he wonders if it's really gotten that long, thinking that he should at least ask for a trim. He says it's not even a bad thing at an expensive salon, but when he was the Specter, things were much more comfortable, because it didn't matter which salon he went to when he took off his mask. But now things have changed, and when he gets there, he's all hooded up, thinking he should try to breathe a little every now and then, and comment asking for part 2, because it's coming very soon. So, without further ado, let's dive right into the content. And at the very beginning, our protagonist is face to face with the so-called Ice Queen, and she, to the hospital as soon as he's finished. Prota simply leaves his room and goes to the museum, and notices that they've put that thing on display for everyone to see. A monster that he probably already killed. When he is inside the place, without any people as usual, he takes off his mask, and it almost makes him imagine that they are on the verge of bankruptcy. He thinks he can go to his usual spot there. He asks for some ramen, but then he sees someone there questioning if it isn't too much, even for a novel, and mentioning that they encountered their teacher years later, in a completely random place. That girl over there is none other than Miss Chai herself, and she spits out her noodles, completely surprised to see the boy reading like that. Initially, he sits down to read a bit, and the girl keeps staring at him, telling him she won't be leaving, even if the girl continues to stare at him like that. She becomes a little awkward and ends up slamming her book on the table, declaring that she's an adult and doesn't believe there's anything wrong with reading the books that she wants to read. And his ancestors used to say that the universe is hidden within books, and he replies that she's not wrong, he just doesn't believe the universe is hidden in the book she's currently reading, because he is the S-rank addict who has trained for 990 million years. And she questions Joao R, asking what he's reading that makes him say that. He responds that it's obviously another novel as well. It's not much better for him either. He asks if they can just say it was a tie, and she tells him to show her his name, which he does. She starts laughing, saying that his name isn't any different from hers. So, he remains in this awkward atmosphere, and after a while, he finally finishes reading. Then he asks Miss Chara if she's finished as well, and she happily says that it was great, and he says that it was a little surprising, and she asks if it's because he saw her in a manga store. He says yes, because he'd heard she was from the elite and thought she stayed far away from places like that, and she says that most people always think that way, but she likes it there because she can simply read without being bothered or interrupted, and she also likes the feeling of turning the pages instead of just reading the book. He glances to the side and realizes that must be the chamber he's been searching for. Upon entering, he finds his 4 friends frozen and apologizes for arriving so late. Virtually. He says the smell of the paper is great too, and she says she loves the smell of old books, because it's as if the smell has only gotten better with time, until her watch beeps and she says it's quite late and thinks she'll head home. He asks if she'd like him to call a taxi, but she says it's alright because she lives nearby and that she'll see him tomorrow. Tomorrow, the protagonist thinks that the lady is truly hardworking and that he should do the same. Then Dougal approaches him, talking about the United States and asking if he's considering going. For the funeral of the Shadow Brothers, he asks why he would go, questioning the protagonist's motives. So, why does he want to go there? He replies that he discovered a location where demons gather. Thanks to him, Diok is very surprised by this and asks where it is. The protagonist says it's a secret and that he'll go personally. Then Diok says he's worried and asks if he's worried about him. But he says no, he's worried about the demons. He's concerned that the protagonist will kill them before getting any information. But the protagonist says he'll be careful, so Diok doesn't need to worry about it. And the protagonist remembers that guy in the hideout saying that he looked like a small fry, but he must know something useful. So, he says he will trust the protagonist. Still, he should warn him if he needs help, but he says he always needs his help, telling Diok to pick that up, throwing the dragon bones. He is surprised, and says they are the bones of the dragon from the Eastern Sea portal. He must use half of them as he prefers and give the rest to Kuon Noa so he can make a sword. So, he says he will tell him, asking if there is anything else to consider, like size or weight. He says to just make the measurements like he did the last few times, and he will know. He says that old man will be 100 years old the day after tomorrow, wondering if he still remembers. Then, sitting down to talk to them, he tells them the world is a much better place now, that they protected the peace they always dreamed of. He says they should rest in peace now, asking everyone to. He tells him to tell him that, telling him to retire soon if he can't even remember that. And, a while later, the protagonist goes to the chamber so he can relax and talks to Mr. Tachar, asking if she can buy a ticket to Las Vegas for tomorrow, and she agrees right away, leading the protagonist to realize that she is a little more agreeable towards him. Then, he turns to look at his inventory, and retrieves the ritual item that erased all problems and brought peace to the world, the Tide Breath Flute. It's a shame that the item will break after 3 uses, which just goes to show how powerful it is. Then, he mentions that the title of Ascension Helper increases his stats, but it's not as good as the one he got for freeing the spring. Still, he is satisfied. His magic stats have never been this high before. Like that. So he figures that, at this rate, it won't be long before he can use the Aura Sword. And the Aura Sword requires a great understanding of magic. Having a high magic stat is a requirement, and he can use it whenever he wants after learning it. He might even be able to learn how to use it even faster than last time, and he doesn't anticipate any problems hunting in the RAM. 2nd floor? And when he learns the Aura Sword and advances to the 3rd floor, he wonders if he will be on the same level as the 9 deities. He imagines just how strong the top players are after 25 years, and how troublesome the demons are. And he contemplates this, becoming excited for what is to come. Then, he mentions Las Vegas, which has casinos and brothels that are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's why the city is called the Place of Sin, and he realizes that the journey took a long time. His whole body aches from sitting for so long. If only Sky were here, they could have teleported in a second. He misses her dearly, until he glances to the side and sees some people looking up. And he realizes that the reason there are so many people on the street is, drink with him there. He becomes increasingly emotional and saddened by the sight of them frozen. However, he notices they are covered in dust and wants to clean them off. But, because the Alcon is being released, and celebrities from all over the world are coming to participate in the artifact auction. But he reminds himself that's not why he's there. So, he consults the map, heading towards his destination, and that he will end this soon and rest. And he finally arrives at that demon store, where the guy inside is very irritated, questioning when the electrician is going to come to fix the air conditioning. And he says that nothing is working as it should. The Shadow Brothers failed, and the air conditioning broke. He says that, now, those damned hunting dogs, he hadn't thought he would see them. And that guy next to him asks if he already knew them. He says yes, because they said it had been a long time since they smelled blood and killed their boss. But then someone arrives, and the guy almost shits himself in fear. He notices that we are hunting dogs, and the girl asks, "What the fuck is this, and why is it so hot?" asking if he wants to die. So they both beg for forgiveness, and she tells them to just give her the orders already, taking the order, and, when she reads it, she is surprised. Then she notices that her job has changed too. They say they can't believe it, asking if they don't go to the second floor, and she says that if he doesn't believe her, he should take a look for himself. As soon as he sees it, he becomes furious, and she talks to her boss, asking if he doesn't think they should file a formal complaint because they are ordering them to steal it. Kaliner isn't even his direct superior, and so the boss remains silent until he looks at that crazy guy with green hair, asking for the request, and he immediately uncrumples the paper so he can hand it to him. As soon as the boss takes it, he sets it on fire, talking to the scout and asking if he had any more orders. He says no, and so he simply tells them both to leave, closing the door and leaving the attendant collapsed on the floor in fear. And his friend asks if they were the hunting dogs, and he says they were scary. As soon as he touches the ice statue, a notification appears, confirming his possession of the Frost X skill, but stating that his magic status is insufficient. He fails to remove the seal, and the boy is quite frightened by, but the leader seemed like a decent guy. But then the old man asks him if he's blind, and he questions why he's so irritated, and the leader says he will only say it once, so he must listen carefully, because the people call the 9 strongest players in the world the 9 Deities, and Arma, the leader of the Hounds, is an apprentice of one of the 9 Deities, as well as one of the executives in their association. Hallo NASA. The blonde wonders if Arma, the skeleton wizard who caused a massacre in Turkey 6 months ago, was there. He says it's crazy, and that they say the Hounds had 5 members, but he didn't like 2 of them, so he turned them into skeletons. And then the door opens again, and they are scared to death. But seeing that it's just Proto, he asks if he's there to fix the air conditioning, asking why it took him so long, because he thought he was going to die from the heat. But Proto then questions him about the heat, saying he thinks, who can help with that, invoking his ice power. They say this is cool, asking if he's a player, but end up noticing that it's getting too cold, asking if it wouldn't be better. Stop, nearly freezing, and tells them to stop playing around. He listens while they are still being polite, but the protagonist says he won't do any of that. If they aren't joking, then the idiot demons must die quietly. So, they take notice and activate their red eyes. And at that moment, the protagonist actually makes his shadow swallow them both, realizing that they were really just small fry, and all they did was relay orders. But hunting crimes are another story, so he makes a call to Dek Gurk, cursing him and saying it's 2:30 inches the morning there, and the protagonist apologizes for waking him up, but he has to ask him for a favor, and Dek Gurk questions whether he is in danger, but the protagonist says it's nothing like that. He wants to participate in the Las Vegas auction, but he can't go without an invitation, asking that. However, it is then revealed that with the Frost X skill, he can remove the ice seal from his 4 friends. Now, he has a reason to keep living. He remains surprised that he can break the Asian if he can arrange one for him, and Dek Gurk says that he's the president of the Korean Players Association, and of course he can, telling him to just give him his name and the number of the hotel room he's staying in. My friend, this protagonist is simply ruthless and loves to kill. He offed them both and even fed his own shadow. I want to keep this going. Just a reminder, this week will be the week of sequels. Oh, Matt isn't posting a sequel? That's up to you guys. Leave a like, because I really want a lot of support on this video so he can be included, maybe, next week, which is the week of sequels. I explained it at the beginning, but now you're confirming it at the end, and I'll see you in the next video. Unfreeze them and bring those guys back. And so, he opens his stats, but is surprised to notice that his magic stat is only 18, and wonders if that was done on purpose. So he notices that he has a long way to go ahead, as it doesn't look like he'll be able to resolve this in a day or two, but it's still possible. He notes that freezing is the key, and Go always said S rank was the highest, and that it's probably the former, but his magic is a problem. He notes that he achieved that after killing the Ice Queen, who is the one who freed the spring. But then he notices that all stats will increase by 30 points every time he goes up a floor in the dimensional elevator, and with this effect, he supposes he can return to his original level just by climbing floors, but she approaches him, all haughty, and asks him how he feels, having arrived there after abandoning his companions to die. The protagonist questions her accusation of abandoning them. Not only does he think he will return to his original level, but he will also become stronger than before. He can make the Ice Queen's power his own, then he can melt the ice and save everyone, and so, now motivated, he asks them to wait just a little longer because he's going to get everyone out of there. Then, sometime later, he tells Daguk that he wants to be a player again, which surprises him greatly. But Proto questions what the surprise is, since he already knew and doesn't know how to do anything else. And Dekgo says he's very regretful, and before he was always saying that he wanted to retire, but Prota points out that was 25 years ago, and Dekgo says that, in any case, he doesn't think it's a good idea. Prota asks why, and he replies that he wants the boy to rest. Because of the demons. Prota explains a little about these demons, who are players who use their powers to commit crimes, whether it's murder or terrorism. They just want to satisfy their desires, and are a cancer on society. He asks if they're back, because before, they wouldn't have had a second to breathe. He says that was before, because there isn't a camera, security on the second floor, and no country has the means to contain them, leading the protagonist to think they must be having an incredible day. But then, Delco mentions that since he's not around, everything, it's too good for him. However, the protagonist tells Delco that he knows why he doesn't want him to become a player again. He then asks if those guys still hate him, and they reply that they will go crazy thinking about how to kill him. The protagonist asks if he's serious, and Delco tells him to forget about it, saying that the only way to return safely is by abandoning the name Specter to return, as if an honor is questioning why he wants to do this. And the protagonist replies that he wants to go to the 10th floor, and he needs to get there. Then Delco asks why the protagonist is questioning him, as if he hasn't found, saying that they wouldn't die so easily. Besides, if he kills her, everything will be over. And she starts laughing at what he just said, questioning him about it, because a way to finish the lava area on the 3rd floor. And he says, of course not. The protagonist then asks what he would do if he said he knew a way. Dior Goog almost loses the rest of his hair, which he has been asking if he knows about it. The protagonist says that he mentioned needing the queen's core and then says that he ate it, and Diok Gu asks if it was Mingal, which makes the protagonist nervous, and it turns out that Diok Gu realizes what happened, noticing that the protagonist ate the core, and the protagonist clarifies that he didn't eat it intentionally. As soon as he defeated her, it entered his body. Then he asks what he wanted him to do, but then he gets very irritated, though he ends up realizing that there's not much he can do about it, and just accepts it. And the protagonist then mentions that he now has the ability to freeze, so he asks if he thinks he can make it to the 3rd floor with this new ability. The protagonist says yes, and Diok Gu says that the reason for him coming back is probably because of his friends, and the boy confirms that, and he says that it's good to hear that. And seeing that there won't be any way to stop the boy from doing what he wants, he says that he is going to take care of the doctors who saw his face. And the protagonist? I told him to do it, and he says it's the least he can do. Prota says that his abilities have been sealed as well, and he's now level 1. Diok Go asks if his stats were also sealed, and this Prota confirms that they were. So Diok Go becomes increasingly stressed, but Prota asks if he can arrange a new player license for him. Diok Go says he forgot to mention something, that the guilds are now more powerful than the association. So he asks if it's possible to get a license for him, and Diok Go says yes. The big guilds have made taking exams to obtain a license a requirement, and you can only get a license by taking the public exam. He tells the boy that he can't help him with that, so Jota says it,